Okay, welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here in such a timely way. This is wonderful. Spokane, Washington. Awesome. Northwest North Carolina, Cummings, Georgia, Asheville, Black Mountain, San Antonio. Awesome, Patricia. Cary, North Carolina, Weaverville, North Carolina, Raleigh. Excellent. Peggy Crow says, I'm not seeing my photo. Oh, there she is. Hi, Peggy. Great to have you. Linda, I'm glad you're here. Jules, hello.
Oh.
Just remember to keep yourselves muted. Jojo. Okay, I think we're getting there.
Wow.
All right. So
I just got I tried to do what you said about the 3 dots on my picture, and somehow I'm on my main screen. I don't know.
all right. Damon's gonna help you. He's a technical support person today. Damon's my partner and he's gonna assist. So if you have technical questions or issues, you can chat him and then I can sort of stay focused. Thank you so much, Damon.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks, Lee. Lisa, if you want to chat me in the chat, are you wanting to change your name or something?
I just want to have my name up there, and my picture disappeared too. I think I hit pin because I thought that would put my name, but it did something else.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay. If you want to put your name in the chat, then I can update it.
Well, I just need to get my picture back up there, or maybe my picture's somewhere else. I don't know.
See you. I'm gonna let you all do that separately. And we can see you if that's the concern. So all right, let's all take a breath together. Let's take another breath together. Oops. Okay, so great to be with you all. Welcome, welcome. Let's get my screen set up. Okay, so if you want to do a gallery view, it's in the upper right-hand corner. You can specify view. Again, if you have technical difficulties, you can chat with Damon. We're not going to spend too much time on technical stuff. So here we are, day 1 of a 2-part series on end of life, paperwork and planning. This class is going to go by so fast. I know it sounds like a lot to be together for 4 hours, but it's really amazing. And we will be really heart connected pretty soon, pretty quickly into this process. It's some kind of mystical magic that happens when we talk about death. Yeah, folks are chatting where they're from in the chat box, and it's a lot of North Carolina based people, but also folks from other places. I have my candle here lit and going. If you have your candle, we have our beautiful spaces, and this is a creative and brave journey that we're on. We don't talk about death very often in our culture. And here we are together, we're burning our candles, we're breathing the same air. And at this moment, all of us are alive and incarnated, so we can celebrate that. There might be some nervousness about this conversation, and I can assure you that it's likely to melt away and replaced by a sense of awe and gratitude. So I'm going to start with a quote by Rilke, the poet Rilke. It's called Life's Other Half. I'm not saying that we should love death, but rather that we should love life so generously without picking and choosing that we automatically include it, life's other half, in our love. This is what actually happens in the great expansiveness of love, which cannot be stopped or constricted. It is only because we exclude it that death becomes more and more foreign to us and ultimately our enemy. It is conceivable that death is infinitely closer to us than life itself. What do we know of it? So we're about to go on a journey today. And Damon, would you let people in if they show up on the, great, thank you. Yeah, so we're about to go on a journey. I want to introduce you to myself a little bit and give you some background and context and introduction before we dive into all of the pieces that we're going to cover, which is a lot. And also we're going to do it with a good amount of integration and process so that we can really be present. And this is my ancestor altar. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got into supporting death and death education and helping people die and having some literacy about death. The wisdom of the ancestor altar comes from one of my mentors, Sobonfu Somé, who has passed into the ancestor world about 2017. And she comes from the Dagara tradition, where all of our beloved dead are considered ancestors. It's a word to describe people who have passed beyond into the spirit world. You don't have to be blood related to them, and you don't have to have been chronologically older than us. It's a way of honoring and respecting those who have gone before. And it's where we're headed in our next chapter. So we still hold those people in our hearts and with some amount of reverence that they have made the journey that we will all make. So ancestors, you all brought a beloved dead with you today to think about and talk about, and we will do a little bit of check-in soon. My mentors, just a big shout out to the shoulders I stand on. Ruth Estranga and Caroline Young from an organization called the Center of End of Life Transitions have been my core mentors in this death work. Big shout out to them. There's many other people. Asheville, North Carolina community has an incredibly death positive, death literate community of death workers, and we're so rich in that way here. And this is Sobonfu Somé from the grief ritual that I've done with her many times before she passed. But mostly my mentors have been the dying, and I have lived at a land-based intentional rural community called Earth Haven Eco Village for the past 20 plus years. And it's near Asheville, North Carolina. And, you know, in my 30 years of living in intentional community, I would say that going through the dying process together as a community is the most bonding thing I've ever experienced in 30 years of living in community. There's something really magical that happens, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's really this evolutionary programming that kicks in, that where we drop into tending and caring, and it just emerges from us, and we put aside our differences and we put aside our disagreements and we tend to the dying. We had 5 deaths over the course of 2 years. It started in the spring of 2016 and went through to the fall of 2018. And 3 of those folks died at home, and we had all home funerals and home burials. And this is a photo of us around the body of Kimchi Rylander. And instead of being freaked out by death, one of our friends gave up her house so that Kimchi could die in it. And that was a big community coming together in so many ways. And instead of being private about it, Kimchi wanted her death to be an educational experience for everyone involved. And so there's a Facebook page I'm going to share with you, and some videos and some really amazing things out there that her death has taught the world. I'm also going to chat you. Okay, whoops. Do that in a second. So I want to share with you a few of my death philosophies as we get started here, because I want to sort of be fully transparent about where I'm coming from and what my agenda is, my values-based agenda. So here it is. My philosophies can be brought together in these 3 ideas. And the first one is that death is a gift. I believe that death can be the biggest contribution we make in this life. And that's a strong statement, but I've seen it. I've seen how impactful death can be. And it can, the bigger we can make it a big gift and one of the biggest blessings of our lives and to the people around us when we are able to receive the love and support from others, when we are able to have some acceptance about our own death, when we can sort of rejoice in some way in the process, in step into the mystery, right? My second death philosophy is that we are the pioneers. We have such a death illiterate culture and a death negative culture that says that death should be feared and avoided. And it implies sometimes that it's a failure. So we have so little information and we have such a narrow understanding of what is possible that it gives us an incredible opportunity and an invitation to explore all kinds of new ideas, notions, experiences, and to make sacred this process that is innately and inherently sacred. So it's up to us. It's up to all of us to do that. And then the third death philosophy is what else is possible? How can we live into the mystery of death? We will all eventually die. And so with that truth, how do we take that, contemplate that, work with that, be with that in grief, in joy, in celebration, in sorrow, in all of the ways we can be with that, and really get creative. I like to look towards the sort of conscious birthing movement. If anybody knows Ina May Gaskin or some of these other folks who are doing this sort of conscious birthing, even ecstatic birthing, and how do we look towards the possibility of death as a positive experience at the very least, and potentially an ecstatic experience? Is that even possible? So I have come to believe we have the built-in mechanisms of brain chemistry and spiritual access to really make this possible. And so we just need to share and co-create and collaborate on what we can create together. So I'd love to hear from you. I know that this question, what makes for a good death, it's sort of in the realm of poets and mystics, but we are all poets and mystics on some level. What do you think makes for a good death? If you could chat that in the chat box. What makes for a good death? What do you think would contribute to a good death? What makes for a good death? To release resistance. I love that. I think anything that could lead to a sense of peace. Very nice. Compassion. Being in peace and acceptance. And this is a practical one. Music, meditation, being surrounded by loved ones. I love that. Honoring everything that we brought and shared in this life. That's great. So like some kind of life review. Living openly with those you love. Comfort and compassion. Being surrounded by loved ones and beauty. Feeling completion. Yeah, that's interesting. Not being afraid and having those around me be in peace and unafraid. That's a really good one, Linda. You know, like, can we have a death literacy around us? It's really good. Choice and family and planning. I feel May proposes, God disposes. I feel May. I'm not quite getting that one. Alice, if you want to unmute, you can say what you mean by that. Ronnie says, when you have forgiven yourself and others for any hurts. I love that. Love, peace, connection, community, joy. Relationships mended, loved ones present. To have family around me, modeling for my children. Welcoming, I love that, Anne. Welcoming death. Are there 3 Anns here? I think there's 2 Anns with an E and 1 Ann without an E. Welcome, Anns. Everyone forgiven, healed, released, Let go of old hurts. Love it. Being in the excitement of what's next as we're birthed into spirit. Love it. Peace in the hearts of those that will be with me. Being present. Y'all are awesome. As much laughter as possible. Man proposes. Got it. Awesome, y'all. These are fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. The phrase that I really have loved and have started to work with and have another class that I teach is like, what makes for a good death is when we walk towards it. When we walk towards it. Someone said something similar when we welcome it, right? I teach another class with my dear friend and mentor, Mary Lane, and we call it Walking Towards a Good Death. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. It's a sister course to this one. It's an internal preparation for death, whereas this course is more of an external preparation for death. So thank you. Thank you for all your answers. So how do we have a good death? How do we learn to walk towards our death? And how do we prepare for that good death, right? There's external preparation and internal preparation. So what are some of the things you imagine doing externally to get right with death? What do you imagine doing externally? You can chat also, but you can also just contemplate that. What do we do externally to get right with death?
Externally?
Externally, right? In our outer world, what do we do? Get our affairs in order. Exactly right. I have an ongoing practice where I purge stuff, right? When I think about my death and I'm like, oh, I can't have this much stuff for someone else to go through. So I have a practice around purging stuff. Get freaking papers filled out. I love that. That's awesome. Live as much of the experiences as we dream. Love it. How do we just say yes to the things we want to say yes to in life? Jules, I love that. That's a big one. I'm going to add that to my list. Another one I have on my list of external preparation is to build a death literate community, because I know that that's going to assist me in my death. And it's like what someone said about a good death. I want to have people around me that are literate. All right. What about internally? What do you imagine needing to do internally to prepare for a good death? Internally. I wrote an article one time that wasn't so popular, but I swear I'm going to make it popular, which is we all die alone. Because the truth is, the journey of our death is the journey of our own relationship with our own self and our soul, our essence. So what do we do? What do we do to get right with that internally? Conversations about death, meditate, come to an understanding about what death is. I love that. Forgive ourselves and others, be aware of and proactive about impermanence. Excellent. Let go. Yes, Alice. Yes. The 4 components of our work in the Walking Towards a Good Death class are letting go, soulfulness, presence, and receiving. And these are things we can practice. We can practice these things. Helping others die until it's our turn. I love that, Joan. That's amazing. Send out lots of light and love. Connect with awake awareness, presence. I love it. I love that. Y'all are amazing. They're great lists. Great. So what's the outcome when we prepare externally and internally? Our loved ones know what to expect. That shared reality can reduce anxiety and conflict. Everyone involved, including ourselves, can be guided by some intentions that we made earlier in our lives. And when the time comes, this is my favorite outcome, when the time comes, we can turn our attention and devote our attention to the mystery, to the liminal, to the time out of mind, to the in-between place, to those shamanic and magical realms, because that's the nature of the process. We can turn our attention there when we have our affairs in order, when we've done the preparation. That's what's going to create the goodness. All right, take a breath with me. All right, Damon, maybe you can set out the breakout rooms for 2 people each, and I'm going to give a little intro, and it's going to be an opportunity for you to drop in with another person and do a little bit of a check-in, just get yourself here. You're going to share your name and where you're from and those things, but you're also going to talk about a beloved dead, right? We all have beloveds who have passed beyond the veils, as they say. This is mine that I'm bringing today. Her name is Courtney Brooke Allen, and she died just about a year ago. The year anniversary of her death is like in 5 days. And when I contemplate, whenever I teach this class, I sit at my ancestor altar and I say, who wants to join me? Who wants to join me this time? And a different ancestor, I'll get a little tingle or a hit that they want to sort of come and be honored. Courtney Brooke was an amazing young woman and lived in my eco village and community, and had a pretty tragic death in a car crash. And it was challenging, a lot of grief, a lot of intensity. And so she shaped my life. She shaped my life with her life. She was so deeply spiritually focused, reverent in ceremony, and also very competent in the physical world, and brought so much to our community as a young, very young person, 25 years old. She came. And then her death shaped my life in so many ways. And I can go into a lot of detail about that, but I learned a lot. We tended her body in her death. There was a lot around it that was so precious and important to our community. And so why we're sharing this is that we're building the muscle to talk about death. And we're building death literate community. So I'm going to send you into breakout rooms, and we'll have another person there. If you get bumped out, try to remember what room you're being sent to, and Damon can put you back in if you get, or I can put you back in. I think Damon's going to go out to a room also. He's going to participate. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions before we go? What you're doing? You're sharing about your beloved dead, how that person shaped your life, and how that person's death shaped you also. So the 2 questions, and I can chat those when you're in your rooms, but how did their life shape you? How did their death shape you? Opportunity to build the muscle of death literacy, to talk about death.
How long will we have?
Why don't we say 7 minutes? So you'll have about 3 minutes each and a callback. Does that feel like enough for folks? Does that feel right? Okay, great. Any other questions?
Lee, do you want me to set a timer in the breakout room for like 10 minutes then, or 8
No,
minutes?
I'll get
Okay.
it. I'll
Okay.
set a timer here.
All right.
Thank you, love. Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Here we go.
I don't know, I need to reset my Zoom settings so the mute happens automatically. Welcome back. Does anyone want to share any insights or thoughts from that process? Anyone want to share? You can unmute and share if you want to, if that touched you, or if you got some insights.
I can see why it's important to start talking about these things if you haven't ever started.
Very good. Yes, thank you, Anne. Who
And
else?
I'd like to ask Lisa to share the last bit that you shared with me about the 2 different ways of approaching it.
Well, I just was sharing that my mother and my father died very different deaths. They were very different from each other, but they really One of them was very resistant, just very scared and just, I say she didn't really surrender to death. She just ran out of energy to fight it. And my other parent just kind of went, wait, here comes the mystery. I'm entering the mystery. And
Wow.
so it was just, so I said that was a big learning for me, watching those two different deaths, because I got to be with each of them.
Oh, what a learning. I love that bookend of, you can do it any way you want to do it. It's free will, right? But here's how it looks and feels this way. Here's how it looks and feels that way. I love that. I love that. Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else want to share? Rima.
I had sort of a similar thing happen with me and my parents. And my mother died in the hospital, in the ICU, with a ventilator in her throat. And I think probably scared out of her mind because she was all alone. It happened at 4 a.m, and we were all home asleep. And then my dad wanted to die in his own bed, and I made sure that that happened for him. And we were all around him having a party, and I heard him laughing. And that night, after we all went to sleep, he felt like he could go, and he did. And I was, the next day, all the women in the family took care of his body and washed him and, did all this stuff. And we kept him in his apartment until we took him to be buried.
I
And did
love
a whole natural thing. And it was really, really wonderful.
I love it.
And so, but it was, I did it without knowing anything about what I was doing, which was kind of, scraping it together at the last minute. So I decided that I was going to really take a course and learn how to do this and be part of the community that I could check in with, and also perhaps even be there for other people and get connected in this story. So that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rima. Yeah, there's more and more resources now, and as we build community, we can learn these pieces about how to care for our own at death. Yeah, very, very good. Glad you had that experience. So welcome back. Thanks for your shares. I'm going to start with this Brene Brown quote, which I love so much. Every single person has a story that will break your heart. And if you're paying attention, many people have a story that will bring you to your knees. Nobody rides for free. This is just an invitation for compassion as we move into this deep, deep contemplation about death. So, my intentions for this workshop, we're going to have a blend of education and interaction today and next week. And what I know about learning styles in a subject like this is we need lots of integration time. So speaking up, if you have a need around pace or understanding, if you want to share something, we're all learning from each other in this journey. Also, feel free to turn your screens off. You need to take care of yourself. 4 hours is a long time, I know, and it's compelling. It's going to go by quickly. We will take a break. I'm going to go through the schedule in a minute, but take care of yourselves. Get up, stretch, roll around the floor, get food, water in, water out, whatever you need to do, take care of yourselves. My intentions for this workshop are to introduce you to a bunch of resources, to build comfort with this conversation, to encourage your contemplation about death, your own and your beloveds, to offer inspiration, to demystify the process. This doesn't have to be complicated. We can do this ourselves. To start our paperwork and maybe to finish our paperwork, depending on where you are in the process, to really identify your next steps. I provided a checklist for following through, and then we're building community. It's a huge piece of my life's mission, is to build community and to enhance our death literacy and death positivity. So those are my intentions. And I also want to offer an invitation that all of us is welcome here, that we embrace the whole spectrum of human experience. And we're inviting in reverence and mystery for those tendernesses that is the human experience. And I just want to name that some of us may have experienced a recent loss here and may be in deep grief. Some of us may be losing someone now. The reason they may be taking this class is because someone in their life is dying. Some of us may be in an active death process. I mean, we're all moving towards our own eventual death, but someone may be in an active death or dying process right now. And some of us may be disconnected and, removed, detached from all of those things. And we may be in a joyful and celebratory place about life right now. It's all welcome. All of it's welcome. Really what I do is I believe that we will find a way to hold it all, because there is wisdom in us and there is sacredness in this conversation. So there's nothing we need to do with all of that other than be mindful, and we're going to just be present to ourselves and others. So it's all welcome. So here's the agenda for today in the schedule. We started at 2. We're going to probably have a break around 4-ish. We're going to come back and continue on with our paperwork. I was going to have a guest today, but decided against it. We'll just have more time I'm going to share this patient advocate information, and then we're going to have wrap up around 5:30. We're going to end at 6. It's a long day, but it's really hopefully juicy enough to keep you engaged. Next week, I'm going to go through the agenda and schedule, but we will go through the last 3 wishes. We will do a bunch of other stuff next week. Consider this course a really solid overview, and you're still going to walk away from this having to tasks to do and paperwork to complete. But you will be more empowered for sure. So here's a David Whyte quote. David Whyte is a modern day poet. Let's take a breath together. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn that anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Thank you, David Whyte. Good reminder. Okay, so let's start on some of the details of the end of life paperwork and planning. So if you can take a photo with your phone, or you can take a screenshot with your computer. If you don't know how to do a screenshot, you can look it up online. I have a PC and it's like the Windows and the print screen. Mac has a print screen button. I'm also going to include these slides in a follow-up email, so you'll have access to them. So if you need to come back and look at them. Oh, and I wanted to share this. Whoops. Oh, the windows. There is a link in the chat, and Damon, you might want to copy that onto your clipboard because people may ask for it again. And you have it. That's a link to my page on my website that I sent you all in the prep email that has all these resources. And I'd like to go through that page with you at some point about how it's organized. And if you're computer savvy, you might be able to have your Zoom screen up on one half of your computer and that resource is on the other. And if you're not, it's no problem. You don't need to do that. It's just, you're at choice with that. But that's the link to so many resources that I'm going to be referencing. Okay, so there's 3 major categories of end of life paperwork. I'm going to try to simplify this so it's not so overwhelming. And I have them in 3 columns here. So the first category of end of life paperwork is when you're still alive, but you can't necessarily make decisions for yourself. There's many names for this. It's called living well, advanced care, or advanced life directives. The 5 wishes is what we're going to be working with. often called healthcare power of attorney, healthcare agent, right? Other things that fall under this is the DNR, which is whether you want to be resuscitated or not. And this most document, which we're going to be talking about next week. So that whole category of paperwork is, I'm still alive, I'm moving towards death. What do I want done and who do I want to do it, right? We're going to go in depth into that today. That's a whole category. Second category of paperwork, after death. What do you want done with your physical body when you're no longer inhabiting it with your spirit? Organ donation, disposition of body paperwork, cremation or burial, final arrangements paperwork, after death care, death certificate. We're going to go through all of that. And then the third category of paperwork is what y'all are probably pretty familiar with, which is, what do you want done with your assets? The things you own. Where do you want them to go, right? That's trusts, wills, beneficiaries, all that financial stuff. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant. We're going to do an overview of that, but we won't be diving into that very deeply. We're going to talk about that next week. Sally asks in the chat, will that link be available to us permanently? Yes, that link will be yours forever. You can go to that resource page and have access to all of that information. Anyone who's taken classes with me have access to that link and that information. And you'll also have access to the recording from today and next week. When people ask me sometimes if they can take this class but not be present for it, I generally say no. It's better to be live because there's so much happening. But if you have to miss here and there a half hour in the beginning or the end, or you want to review something, the recordings will be available for you. Okay, so what are we covering today? We are covering wish 1 and wish 2, which are the biggest wishes of the 5 wishes. And we're going to do the addendum and the checklist. And that's a big chunk for today, as well as this intro, this overview, this death literacy component. So what I'm going to do, let's see. Let me just read you this one quote. Seeing death as the end of life is like seeing the horizon as the end of the ocean. Seeing death as the end of life is like seeing the horizon as the end of the ocean. So what I like to do in this course, and you all have either printed out a 5 wishes or you have a booklet. What I like to do is have other people read so that it's not just my voice you're hearing. And we're going to actually slow this down and actually go through these 5 wishes together. It's quite a process. So I'm going to call on folks to read certain sections. And if you don't want to read, if it's not your thing, just pass when I call on you. Just say no thanks, pass. Plenty of people like reading aloud and have great voices for reading. The other thing I will say is that there's different versions of these booklets, and I have a whole bunch that I bought. You can buy them from the 5 wishes thing. If you buy one, it's like $5, but if you buy 25, it's like $1 each. So, I just bought a bunch because I was doing these classes in person, and then of course COVID hit and now I have tons of them. But it's a little bit older. And so if some of you if you took it off my website, it'll be the same version. We'll find our way though. There's some slight changes. If some of you bought it off the 5 Wishes website, it might have some differences, but we'll navigate it. We'll find our way. So let's go ahead and start. So the 5 wishes are on the front. So the first one is the person I want to make decisions for me when I can't. That's wish 1. Wish 2 is the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. The third is how comfortable I want to be. The fourth is how I want people to treat me. And the 5th is what I want my loved ones to know. The wonderful thing about the 5 Wishes is it's an international movement. It's a nonprofit. And they created a template that more or less works for most people. There's going to be some things in here you don't like, and that's fine. But it's accessible. It's available. You can even get it online where you don't have to pay for it at all. You just download it or you fill it out on their website and then you print it. So very accessible, and it takes all the legal jargon out of it. So you can have a real intimate relationship with what you want. So I love this. I love this organization. I love this process. And we'll talk more about redundancies. Redundancies in end of life paperwork is really a good thing. You want to be redundant. And I'll talk more about why that is. Okay, so I would love for someone to, Lisa Bibelheimer, would you read? I'm on page 2 of my booklet, and it has a big 5 wishes at the top. And I wonder if you'd be willing to read that first paragraph in italics, and then the next section, which is called What is 5 Wishes?
Okay, sure. There are many things in life that are out of our hands. This 5 wishes document gives you a way to control something very important: how you are treated if you get seriously ill. It is an easy to complete form that lets you say exactly what you want. Once it is filled out and properly signed, it is valid under the laws of most states. What is 5 wishes? 5 wishes is the first living will that talks about your personal, emotional, and spiritual needs, as well as your medical wishes. It lets you choose the person you want to make healthcare decisions for you if you are not able to make them for yourself. 5 wishes lets you say exactly how you wish to be treated if you get seriously ill. It was written with the help of the American Bar Association's Commission on Law and Aging and the nation's leading experts in end-of-life care. It's also easy to use. All you have to do is check a box, circle a direction, or write a few sentences.
That was great. You're a good reader. Thank you. Alice Elliott, would you read the next section, if you're willing? How 5 wishes can help you and your family.
How 5 wishes can help you and your family. It lets you talk with your family, friends, and doctor about how you want to be treated if you become seriously ill. Your family members will not have to guess what you want. It protects them if you become seriously ill, because they won't have to make hard choices without knowing your wishes. You can know what your mom, dad, spouse, or friend wants. You can be there for them when they need you most. You will understand what they really want.
Excellent, Alice. Thank you so much. The next little section, at least on mine, says how 5 wishes began, and it talks about Jim Towie, who worked with Mother Teresa and then sort of developed this and all the sort of shows and other things he's been on. We can skip that part. Sally, would you be willing to read, at least for me, it's on page 3. Who should use the 5 wishes? It's at the top of the page for me. You should, you need to unmute, love.
Right.
Great.
Who should use 5 wishes? 5 wishes is for anyone 18 or older, married, single, parents, adult children, and friends. Over 13 million Americans of all ages have already used it because it works so well. Lawyers, doctors, hospitals, and hospices, faith communities, employers, and retiree groups are handing out this document.
Great. Would you also read, it's at the bottom of the page for me, how do I change 5 wishes? Is that there for you?
Sure, yes.
Great.
How do I change 5 wishes? You may already have a living will or a durable power of attorney for healthcare. If you want to use 5 wishes instead, all you need to do is fill out and sign a new 5 wishes as directed. As soon as you sign it, it takes away any advance directive you had before. To make sure the right form is used, please do the following. Destroy all copies of your old living will or durable power of attorney for healthcare. Or you can write revoked in large letters across the copy that you have. Tell your lawyer if he or she helped prepare those old forms for you, and tell your healthcare agent, family members, and doctor that you have filled out a new 5 wishes. Make sure that they know about your new wishes.
Awesome, Sally. Thank you so much. Any questions so far? That's the general overview. how Five Wishes came to be, what it is. To be clear, I'm pretty sure, as my memory serves me, that if you get onto the Five Wishes website, they have an online version you can fill out and print, but they don't store it for you. It's not like a database. You'd have to like print it, download it as a PDF, and then sort of share it with your people from there. I like having a physical copy. And I like the fact that it's in a booklet, so that's up to you. It's fine to have a printed off page as well. There's a notarization at the end. There's that one section in the middle which talks about the states and the legalities. Legality is tricky with this stuff. It sort of depends on whether the institution is up for honoring things in the heat of the moment. We're going to talk a lot about that, but if your state's not on there, I still love to come at this from the Five Wishes, and then you can use this as a contemplation tool and then get more legal documents. And that's the redundancy piece. We're going to talk more about that.
So I just have a quick question. So it says this is legal and binding, is that correct? And that it trumps a living will if you choose this, the Five Wishes. So is it legal and binding without a lawyer, which would be fantastic and worth the courts a million times?
Legal and binding. Anybody who works in healthcare here, and I'm sure there's a fair amount of you, will tell you that the sort of guiding principle of healthcare is to keep you alive. And so when you show up in a hospital situation or other institution, they're not super death literate. And often there's acute situations where they need to resuscitate, or there's an emergency room situation. If that happens, even if someone whips out your Five Wishes, it's hard to know if it's going to be followed or honored. And we're going to talk more about that in Wish 2. This is where there's a lot of gray area and where we're dealing with cultural biases around life and death and health and illness. So hold that question and we'll talk about it. Theoretically, this is legal. The redundancy piece is going to come in when I tell you about other forms of paperwork. Sometimes you will go into a hospital situation and they'll say, we don't like the Five Wishes. It's too much to read. It's too many pages. All we want is one page. We want the most document and we want to see very clearly what you want and what you don't want. We want to glance at it. That's why you do both. The reason I use the Five Wishes to start is because it's relatable. And it's a way to demystify the process. And then we can transfer what we've decided we want onto these other documents that some of these institutions like better. So we're going to get to all of that. So let's just breathe through that. And I'm going to say this a lot of times, but legal and binding, sure. Depends on the context. Linda.
Just question about what you just said. So a hospital will say, we want a one page. So you do the Five Wishes, and what was the other document?
This is the most document. We're going to talk about it next week. And it's for North Carolina, but other
Oh,
states.
the most. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Other thoughts, questions? Let's hang on to context. Its context is going to become clear. I promise. All right, let's go to page 4 in my booklet, which is Wish 1. And Rye, R-Y, is that how am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes, right.
Right, great. Would you read that whole top section that's the title and then the italicized section there?
Okay. Wish 1, the person I want to make healthcare decisions for me when I can't make them for myself. If I am no longer able to make my own healthcare decisions, this form names the person I choose to make these decisions, makes these choices for me. This person may be my healthcare agent or other term that may be used in my state, such as proxy, representative, or surrogate. This person will make my healthcare choices if both of these things happen. My attending or treating doctor finds I am no longer able to make healthcare choices, and another healthcare professional agrees that this is true. If my state has a different way of finding that I'm not able to make healthcare choices, then my state's way should be followed.
Excellent, thank you. And so you see there, the next section says the person I choose as my healthcare agent is, there's a first choice, a second choice, and a third choice. So, Peggy, would you read, at least mine, it's on the bottom of page 4, picking the right person to be your healthcare agent. You're muted, love, I can't hear you.
I said I would, but I don't have a printed one and it's fuzzy, so I'll do it some other time.
All right, Peggy, thank you. Kwai, would you read? If I said your name correctly?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. It's picking the right person to be your healthcare agent. Choose someone who knows you very well, cares about you, and who can make difficult decisions. A spouse or a family member may not be the best choice because they are too emotionally involved. Sometimes they are the best choice. You know best. Choose someone who is able to stand up for you so that your wishes are followed. Also, choose someone who is likely to be nearby so they can help when you need them. Whether you choose a spouse, family member, or friend as your healthcare agent, make sure you talk about these wishes and be sure that this person agrees to respect and follow your wishes. Your healthcare agent should be at least 18 years or older, in Colorado, 21 years or older, and should not be your healthcare provider, including the owner or operator of a health or residential or community care facility serving you, an employee or spouse of an employee of your health care provider, or serving as an agent or proxy for 10 or more people, unless he or she is your spouse or close relative.
Excellent, thank you so much. Rachel and then Jules, would you be willing to read? Rachel, if you're willing to read on page 5, there's a little italicized heading at the top, and if you would read the 4 bullet, at least for me, 4 bullet points on the left-hand side, and then Jules will have you read the bullet points on the right-hand side.
Will you please put it on your,
Yep. Thank you. Good. There it is.
Okay, I understand that my healthcare agent can make healthcare decisions for me. I want my agent to be able to do the following. Please cross out anything you don't want your agent to do that is listed below. Make choices for me about my medical care or services like tests, medicines, or surgery. This care or service could be to find out what my health problem is or how to treat it. It could also include care to keep me alive. If the treatment or care has already started, my healthcare agent can keep it going or have it stop. Next, interpret any instructions I have given in this form and given in any other discussions according to my healthcare agent's understanding of my wishes and values. Consent to admission to an assisted living facility, hospital, hospice, or nursing home for me. My healthcare agent can hire any kind of healthcare worker I may need to help me or take care of me. My agent may also fire a healthcare worker if needed. Make a decision to request, take away, or not give medical treatments, including artificially provided food and water, and any other treatments to keep me alive.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Y'all are awesome at this. Jules, if you want to pick up the next column.
Sure. See and approve release of my medical records and personal files. If I need to sign my name to get any of these files, my healthcare agent can sign it for me. Next bullet point, move me to another state to get the care I need or to carry out my wishes. Next bullet point, authorize or refuse to authorize any medication or procedure needed to help with pain. Next bullet point, take any legal action needed to carry out my wishes. Next bullet point, donate usable organs and tissues of mine as allowed by law. Next bullet point, apply for Medicare, Medicaid, or other programs for or insurance benefits for me. My healthcare agent can see my personal files like bank records to find out what is needed to fill out these forms. And final bullet point listed below are any changes, additions, or limitations on my healthcare agent's powers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much. And down below, it just says, if you change your mind, you can write revoked, or you can just destroy the copies and replace it with a new one. If you have multiple copies of anything, the newest date will trump anything that's happened before. So, great. Let's talk about Wish One. So, there's lots to unpack here. This is the sort of most complicated of all 5 wishes. So we have, several conversations to have about this, which is, how do you imagine having conversations with potential healthcare agents, right? What is that going to look like? What's that going to be like? How do you start to think about who those people are? And I think the big question is, what are the characteristics that you're looking for? What are the characteristics that you're looking for in a healthcare agent for yourself? So you can either unmute and speak to those characteristics, or you can put them in the chat box. So we're going to have a discussion here. This is really important to think about. What are the characteristics of a healthcare?
Can we have this conversation? I wanted to tell you what I did before I knew anything, is that I asked a friend who knows my adult children well, and I just asked her to, I think what she understood and I understood is that she would be talking with the 3 children and just kind of help them come to an agreement. And she didn't figure that she was going to have to really make any decisions, but if there should be some conflict among them, she's a therapist and she would be able to do it. But what kind of trouble am I getting into? I didn't want to choose one adult child.
Yeah, let's keep that question alive. Thank you. I love the question, which is, if you have multiple children, how do you choose? Do you choose a friend? Like, let's keep the inquiry going. What are the other characteristics? What are the characteristics that you want in a healthcare agent? If any of you come from a medical background, I'm sure you have thoughts about this. Calm, confident, and comfortable with the role, says Rachel. Excellent.
I wanted to just add that, of course, people that are closest to you and know you best might be the ones that are grieving the most. And not everyone is equipped to care about you and love you and make tough decisions.
You got it.
So I think, looking at proximity as well, with relatives so spread out, and even my closest to my heart being my sister, being in another state, I would still want her to be available by phone. It would take a tag team person to make sure that she gets called, make sure that she's involved in. As my parents also said, of their will, co-executors, they chose the eldest child and a very removed family member who they knew would be practical. So I think that's very helpful to possibly consider 2 people.
Yeah, great job articulating the complexities of this, right? Very good. Kwai says, someone who shares my philosophy and values. Jill says, fierce and not intimidated by doctors or the boxes that medical facilities can try to lock you in. Peggy says, objective. Alice says, good listener. Robin says, someone comfortable with death, a clear, detailed communicator, someone aligned with my values. Y'all are so getting this, the depth of this. Jules, knowledgeable about your situation medically, emotionally, and spiritually. Tom says, someone who is familiar with my wishes through frequent contact. Very good. I love that, Tom. And who agrees with, or at least can share that reality, absolutely, of the decisions I've chosen. That is so beautiful, beautifully said. I don't have family anymore, so it would be someone I feel might outlive me. Very good, Ronnie. I love that. To really think about that. We never know, right? But a person who is able to think about what is best for me and the ways to support the experience that I want and the community of people that I love, able to effectively love and lovingly affect my plan. Very well said. If older, sometimes problematic, over time, choose someone in the same generation or younger. Sure. Yeah, those are great. Y'all are really getting it. I've made a little list here. You all are, pretty far ahead of the game. You can take a screenshot of this or photo, but and there's more than this, but this is just a list. Available and willing, right? Available and willing. Someone may not be willing or available. Say they have young children, or they're in a heavy duty job, or they're caring for their own people who are declining. So available and willing, familiar to the self and your family or friends, community, someone you know and trust. Geographic location is huge, just huge. Is someone going to decline for a week, 3 months, 3 years? What does that look like? They're halfway across the world. Ability to be fierce with medical institutions. It's interesting that, Jill, that you use that word, because I use that word too. Ability to be fierce, not intimidated, is what Jill said. Very good. Comfort with the death and dying process. Capable of making decisions. Literate with medical issues to some extent. Ability to hold the process as sacred. That's maybe not everybody's, but I put that on there because that's important to me. And understands your priorities. So you can start to see that finding all of this in one person can be tricky. My approach, which I'll share with you, and people really love this, is I am part of a death care team. And I've been part of a death care team for many, many years. And we have gotten together and agreed that we'll put one person's name, one of the death care team in option one in option 2, and one in option 3. But it really, legally, that person is responsible, but it represents a group think. It represents a group process that not one person is going to be taking all this responsibility on. And like you were saying, whoever was just saying, co-executors, co-power of healthcare power of attorneys, really helpful, because as we start to think about this, it just starts to feel like a lot, right? And some people who are maybe the most heartful and we want holding our hand and we feel close to may not be the fiercest people in our lives to stand up to medical institutions, right? So how can we tag team this? It's one option. We have 3 choices on this form because, as many of these legal things, if you put someone in the first choice and they're suddenly not available for some reason, either they have died or their life doesn't permit it, or it comes at a bad time, then you go to the second choice and then the third choice. I think listing a spouse on here is a good idea in general. Even if the spouse doesn't really want to be in some of those roles. But to include the spouse, obviously, in the process, even if they're not the primary healthcare agent. Other thoughts about this? Damon, we're gonna do breakout rooms again for folks to talk about the healthcare agent, but I have a couple more slides first, but if you want to set them up, you can. Why don't we do 3 people each? And I'll determine the time in a minute. Other thoughts about the characteristics of your healthcare agent?
I have a question. So you were saying that it's good to have 2 people, like kind of a little team, a group of people. But I mean, legally, if you use this document, would they go to the first one? And then if that person agreed, then the other 2, I mean, legally, they wouldn't go to those other 2, but maybe those 3 people could get together. So you'd need to talk to 3 and tell them you want them to work together, or I'm just not sure what
Yeah.
you mean.
I mean, with my death care team, we meet regularly and we have these conversations. But for example, if the 3-child thing, like you can put each of your children in each of these things and then just have the conversation with them, like y'all are gonna have to work together, right? So whoever's in this is the bottom line legally, and that the hospitals or the, you know, the institutions will defer to them because they're legally your healthcare power of attorney or healthcare agent. But knowing behind the scenes that they have this support, that they are able to do this in collaboration with others and take different tasks on, is a way to start thinking about it. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
I'd like to offer something here.
Please.
So, community is Lee, and a mutual friend of ours died recently. And there were a couple of people, women, that were responsible for most of the significant decision making. But there was also tremendous community support through emails and visiting in hospice, and people were very kind and generous in distributing the responsibility. And it wasn't even, we didn't sign up for that in the beginning. It was just a spontaneous caring. And of course that depends on, you know, how old you are when you die and how many friends are around. But I just thought I would offer that as an experience that was very recent and very palpable and very, very endearing and heartwarming. That's another option, a way to look at it.
Yeah, I love that, Ronnie. Thank you so much. And it's true. We went through this death together recently, and so much beauty in that. And you know, I often talk about, like, the village is the best place to die, right? And let's create the village. Like, what is that village? What is that community? And that's part of developing death literate community. And so that we have people around us who are a heck yes to this. I'm in. I want to be there. I want to be there as you die. But not everyone has that. And I've had people take this class that say, oh, I have so much grief because I'm hearing you all talk about this community approach, and I don't have that. I don't have family. I don't have friends. I just moved to a new city, or I never had children. And so let's talk about that too, right? Like, that is a reality for some people. I want to talk a little bit about patient advocacy before I send you out into breakout rooms. But some of the questions I'd love for you to consider when you go to breakout rooms and talk about this is, like, who are your healthcare agent considerations? Who are you thinking about? Do you have primary thoughts about that? Do you have some backups? What do you imagine the conversation with them to be like? What are their pros and cons? Like, what of this list would they excel at, and what would they not excel at? So these are the kinds of things we're going to start to explore. But before we go, I want to tell you about patient advocacy. And this was the guest speaker that I sometimes have, Karen Sanders, who's here in Asheville, North Carolina. And I will put her, I'll copy this link and put this link in the chat so you can see it. But wherever you are, there are patient advocates. And this is a sort of emerging field. So much to say about this. Karen is a RN, registered nurse patient advocate. She's got 40 years of experience as an RN, as a manager, as a hospital administrator, as an educator. She's amazing. Board certified this and that and the other thing. And she is straight up, full out articulate about how screwed up our healthcare system is off, and she talks about how we need to take our power back, and the struggle, especially at the end of life, can be real, right? It can be intimidating. They don't really answer our questions fully. They can sort of disregard our wishes sometimes. There can be medical errors. And I think people are well-intentioned in the healthcare industry, and yet it's sort of marked by this idea of production and industry and corporate and quotas. And so it's tricky, it can be tricky. And so a patient advocate is someone that we hire to stand up and speak for us on our behalf, right? They often have a public face, they're good at communication, they're good with people, they're cool under pressure, but they can be clear. They're very literate in healthcare issues, and they can navigate and negotiate. These are people that could maybe go to appointments with us or visit the hospital if there's a challenge. And so if we're going to do something like this, sometimes the hospital system can assign a case manager or a nurse navigator. But you might want an independent one. You might want someone you hire yourself. And so, it's emerging. There's all kinds of information, and Karen's website is amazing. She basically trains nurses to be patient advocates. So you can imagine that, like, reaching out to some of these folks, you could interview them. What's your history? What's your experience? What's your credentials? What's your degree? How long have you been doing this? Get to know them. And how it can work is sometimes Karen has people that are not sick or dying, and they hire her, and they check in once a year, and they say, these are my 5 wishes, and this is my health conditions. And she's agrees, she's $100 an hour or something for however long you drop in. And then when you need her, she knows you. You've already developed a relationship with her. So that's a rough overview of patient advocacy. Patient advocate can be your healthcare agent. They are willing to be a healthcare agent. You can put them in your 5 wishes. So that's another option if you feel that's going to be important for you. I just copied some things off of Karen's website because I loved what she wrote, the things she offers. Supporting you as you negotiate healthcare settings, reviewing your medical records and helping you understand your treatment, what you've been given, helping you develop a list of questions for your doctor, helping you understand tests, medications, side effects, contraindications, helping you gain access to a healthcare facility. These are really helpful things. Helping you get answers to your questions. As I mentioned, going to an appointment, helping file a complaint if there's been something that happened at a facility. She says, she's recently said to me that this is the biggest nursing and CNA shortage of her lifetime right now, that nurses are leaving nursing because it's so stressful and so tense, and these corporate entities have sort of taken over, and these places of work are pretty oppressive, and the money's not great. So there's nursing shortage is a big deal, and can imagine how stressful that is in a hospital setting. Looking at billing issues. These are all the things a patient advocate can do. It's incredible. Visit you and your family members to help maybe your healthcare team, or help your healthcare agent make decisions. Educate the family, discuss medical errors. So all of these things, brilliant. It's just brilliant. So you can put that on your checklist if you want to research patient advocacy and find someone that can do that for you. So that's another option. So you don't have to feel so alone about this or find the perfect person or the perfect team. This is an option. You can save money for this. You can put money aside for this and say, like, this is important to me. I really want this. Okay. So before we go into breakout rooms, just to remind you, we're talking about healthcare agent here. Who are you thinking about? What does that look like? Any questions before we go? Any questions, comments, suggestions, feedback, anything? Alice,
How long will we have?
how long should we have? How long do y'all want? If there's 3
Could
people.
you give us a reminder when we're about halfway through?
That's a good idea. Yeah, I can broadcast that, sure.
Thank you.
And when you get the 60-second reminder at the end that you have 60 seconds left, don't click anything. It's just a reminder. If you click something, you'll get bounced out, but just let it be and you'll stay in for another 60 seconds. So how many minutes do y'all want if there's 3 of you? Do you want 15 minutes? Does that feel like too long? Does that feel right? So 15 minutes, raise your hand if that feels right to you. Maybe feels a little long, maybe 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Okay, we'll do 12 minutes with a 1-minute callback. Great. Linda, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think somebody put this in the chat, but if I were to hire someone like Karen, would they actually be listed as one of my healthcare? I would list them as one of the 3.
If you wanted to, yeah, they would. They
Okay.
could do that. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
So would this advocate replace the need for a healthcare agent or as a person to support their efforts? They would be your healthcare agent if you negotiated that with them. They could be your healthcare agent. Or they could be listed second or third, and they could sort of support your healthcare agent and your family to make decisions. It just depends on how you want to structure that.
Yes, Lee, I think I love that you brought it up about the advocacy anyway, because again, we're just not all equipped with the right questions. I'm retired and helping out many of my relatives, but I still don't have like RN knowledge to navigate the system. So I think as part of the team, that kind of solves my problem too, with having somebody local that can be the participant in that way. But yeah, I'm already thinking about the team document that spells out for them what they need to discuss and how they can divvy up roles if needed, you know?
I know, I love it. I love it. And I asked Karen last time in the class, I was like, and can you find a deaf literate patient advocate? She said, oh yeah, ask them. What are their values around death? Are they willing to make hard decisions that could lead you to death sooner rather than more suffering, right? Like what? And so Karen is very death literate, and she's married to a death doula and a death patient advocate. So that's something you want to look for if you want a patient advocate that shares your values. These are the questions you want to ask as you interview them. But yeah, it's an amazing emergent thing, and make sure you have good chemistry with the person. You like them, you like being around them, you want to have them in your close circle. Other questions before we go? Okay,
What is our topic again?
who are you considering for your healthcare agent? How are those discussions going to go? The pros and cons of that. So really, we're contemplating which one. We're contemplating which one and how you're going to make this decision about your healthcare agent. All right, Damon, ready when you are. Do you want to go, love? Oh, All right, welcome back. So you can start to see that this is a complicated question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Just to say a little bit more about my death care team and other people have experiences also, it's a group of friends, right? 5 women in my life, none of us are married. 2 of the 5 women have 1 child each. The rest of us don't have children. And we get together once a month and we watch a movie about death, or we have just a potluck and check in, and we just getting to know each other over time, right? And when I was living more full time in my community, we had a death care. I had a death care team there as well, of people who were excited about and positive about and literate about death, and that we just agreed that we're going to be walking each other home. And so, you know, this is an opportunity to sort of build literacy and community. Not everyone feels drawn to this approach, so it's not a requirement by any stretch, but it's a way to start thinking communally instead of one person has to figure all this out. What are thoughts? What are thoughts, feelings, contemplations that you have from this wish one?
Lee, I wanted to ask how to approach people who might have, for example, very religious beliefs, and where some people don't have children, some people don't have friends around them or family members around them. I mean, I feel like I don't have very many like-minded people around me. And so I think to find a group of people and to start having some of these discussions, you know, it's kind of like, how can you gain acceptance for your wishes when they're contrary to their own?
Yeah, we're going to talk more about death literacy and deaf community, but I think it's great to bring it up now and like keep that conversation and inquiry alive, and how to have these conversations. I mean, I'd love to hear other opinions on this, but you know, my thought in the moment is go where it's easy, you know, find someone who's lit up about this, as lit up about this as you are, and cultivate that. You know, if someone in your life is like, oh, don't talk to me about this, like that's a long road, right? Other ideas in response to that, like how do we cultivate these conversations? Let's keep that conversation alive, and also want to hear from you, Peggy.
Basically, this was just about choosing who's going to do what. And I have 3 children that I could see that, because I've told them, I told the girls, I think my son would be the best because he's objective. And they both say he would be offended by that because he would think you would mean you don't love him, that he doesn't love you enough. And we've had very few conversations, but he would be objective. My middle daughter, oh my God, she's fierce. You do not want to fight her down. And then my youngest daughter, we are more of history type of people. So it's like I can see it divvying it up, but I don't know if that creates more problems than it alleviates.
I mean, I'd love to see you have a kitchen table conversation or whatever you can by Zoom, where you say, can you all work together? You all have strengths. Like each of you have these beautiful strengths. Can we have enough conversations about death so this could be something positive, as opposed to, you know, sometimes children will be like, oh, don't talk about that, you're not dying, right? So you have to pierce that veil, right? Like, I am gonna die, we're all gonna die, but can we have this conversation? And so, you know, and then how do they get along with each other? I think the conversation about one's going to be offended, one's not going to be offended, like, I'm sure that's real, but I think if you can have an honest, transparent conversation, I think you can get through that layer pretty quickly.
Well, I think the biggest deal is we've had parent-child issues, and I've worked through a hump of them with my girls, but not with my son. So, and he's the one I'm looking at as being the primary person. So he's the one they said they thought would be offended. So it's complicated.
It
It's
is
long.
complicated. It is. It is.
I had a comment on that. It's
Please.
just one thing to think about, Peggy, but anybody is how your kids, their relationship with death, and so you might your son might be great in theory, and then when that comes up, they shut down. Some people are really good when this is present and they feel all these emotions about their mom dying, and other people are, you know, quite frankly, a nightmare. They turn, their whole different side of them comes out when a close person's dying. Like I happen to be really good in those situations. So people usually go one way or the other, and you can kind of tell that if you know someone really well.
Well, we haven't even broached this conversation at all. So,
but knowing how if they're super emotional and not able to be logical at all when they feel attached or emotion, that's almost, to me, would be number one criteria. Because if they're
because I feel like my son could be detached. I feel my middle daughter would be fierce. And the youngest daughter, I think, is more going to be look at a historical thing. So if they could go back to their core strengths as who they are as people, not as dying in a dying situation, that's all I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, sounds like a great team. Thank you, Jojo, for that. You know, what are the pros and cons of each person? We're all going to have our strengths and our weaknesses. And if I were in a situation where I needed to be super fierce, it's also not the easiest place for me to then get soft and tender, right? So if I'm with someone I want to be very heartful, soft and tender with, I don't also want to be the fierce one. Right. So how do we not? I could do both of those things, but I'm not sure I can do them at the same time. Right. Rachel, go ahead.
Actually, I kind of I had experience. My sisters and I facilitated my mother's hospice, or we did her hospice, and it was great that we all brought different skills to it, where my brother was not able to be involved in really much. He had to keep his distance, and it feels like a big gift that it brought us closer, that experience. That's what I'm trying to, communicate here. And we were able to all respect my brother's limits as well, and embrace him where he was. And so it ended up, being a very, very powerful bonding for the family. Actually, and we had our problems in history. So my mother's death out there brought healing to the family. I just wanted to share that.
No, I mean, it's one of the ways that death can be a tremendous gift. I mean, the death that Ronnie was just talking about, I encountered someone in the process of caring for the vigil time, and I stayed overnight. And the next day I saw someone that I'd been in community with for over 20 years, and we had been estranged. And we had a beautiful, beautiful encounter. And it was so healing. That 15 minutes over the death, I mean, death can heal so much. And so it's going to be a rare family that comes together without any conversation and drops into their right places. That's going to be pretty rare. What's going to facilitate that is conversation. And so now I want you to look at your checklist, and I want you to make notes for yourself. There's blank spaces. This checklist might not be perfect for everyone, but who are you going to start to have conversation with, right? Discuss with healthcare agents. Make some notes in that column. When do you want to start doing that? Who do you want to start having conversations with? Use the excuse that you're taking a class and you need to have this conversation. I'm making you have this conversation. You have to be a good student. Whatever you need to do to put it out there, to say, I want to have a conversation or a series of conversations about this. I want our family, or I want our friend group, or I want my death to be conscious and intentional. And I want to start having these conversations. here, take this class or watch this video or read this book. Like this can really be a positive experience.
Do
And
you
then-
have a list of the conversations? Is that, have you done that? Suggestions of a,
There is a really good book about conversations that someone just turned me onto. I'll look for it in the break and I'll
yeah,
send
and it
it.
would also be nice to have it, all those things you were saying on a sheet too, because our homework, what are we gonna do next? And
Well-
which conversations in what suggested order, it'll all be different, but
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I can specify that for each person, but use the checklist, make it your own, make the checklist your own. I put a Word copy on my thing so you can get in there and you can change it, put different things in there, write it down on a piece of, just do your own checklist. And absolutely, like, if you have 5 different people you're thinking about for healthcare agents, say, listen, I'd like to make a date to have this conversation and I'd like to do it in the next 2 weeks. This is a course I'm taking. I want to complete my paperwork by this time. So
well, is there a list of discussions to have somewhere on this and I just can't access it right now?
yeah, so at the very top of the checklist, it says discuss with healthcare agent.
Okay, I couldn't find that. So we already got that. That's
You already
great.
got that. Yep, you got that. Great. Other thoughts, comments? We're about ready to take a break. We've really rolled around in this wish one. You can see why, right? If people are left to their own devices and they open this booklet and then they think, gosh, that seems like a big job to ask someone to do, and then it gets overwhelming, right? So how do we break that down into step-by-step components where we can actually make forward motion with this? Okay. So we're gonna do a sort of longish break. Let's do 20 minutes. I have a thing for you to do during that time. That'll take about 5 minutes. So I'm gonna chat this link here and I'm gonna share the screen really quickly and give you instructions. So this is a game that you can play online. It's also a deck of cards that you can buy. And I'm gonna, give me a second because I'm gonna pull it up and I'm gonna show you how to play it. So give me 1 second. I didn't prepare that in advance, but I think I can get there quickly. This is in preparation for Wish 2. Okay. All right. I can share my screen with you. Okay. Great. Can you all see that? Great. Okay. So this is the link that will take you to this page. And this right here up here is this little deck of cards. And there's something like, I don't know, 40 something cards. And then there's 3 sections below it. One says very important, one says somewhat important, and one says not important. And you'll notice that the very important has a limited number of spaces. That's intentional because we're trying to discern and hone what's important to you. So how you do this is you click on this deck.
To prevent arguments by making sure my family knows what I want.
And it speaks to you. And this is one of the cards in the card deck. And so for me, I'm going to prevent arguments. That's not that important to me. Let them argue. So I'm going to go down here and click, and it's going to show up in the not important. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click this deck.
To feel that my life is complete.
To feel that my life is complete. Oh, that's somewhat important to me. So I'm going to click right here and it's going to go into that box.
To feel that my life is complete.
If I put it in the wrong section, I can click on it. It'll come back up to the top and then I can click where I want it to go. So if you get the hang of that, you can save your session, you can print your session. And if you decide someday to get a deck of cards, it's also super fun to play with others as you're getting death literate. So let's come back. It's 3:55 East Coast time right now. And so it's 5 before the hour. Let's come back at 1/4 after. So take a break, do what you need to do, and then if you get to play this game, that would be great. It's going to be a jumping off point for us to go into Wish 2. Any thoughts before we leave? You can just stay here, but just like turn your camera off and your microphone off. Diane.
Go Wish.
Go Wish. Yep, it's in the chat box.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see that. Okay,
Okay, see y'all soon.
thank you.
To have human touch.
Diane? Oh, yeah, thank you.
I can't see the card game.
You may need to minimize your Zoom window in order to see the link pop up behind on your computer screen.
Oh, it's back there somewhere?
Yeah, if you clicked it, it might be behind, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You folks are gonna start to come back.
Are you familiar with the villages that, like there's an Ashby Village in Oakland?
Mm-mm.
It's what, do you know about NORCs, naturally occurring residential communities? These are groups that you should infiltrate or at least introduce yourself to, because what the villages are here, and it's a movement all over the country, is people that want to age in place and need mutual support. And they do all kinds of wonderful things of all sorts. And it would be a no-brainer for you to help them. And many of them would choose, they give presentations of people that are interested in aging and things like that. Ashby Village is great right now and I could have learned about you from them, but I didn't, because they don't know about you if you don't know about them. But it's something really, maybe I'll ask them to go and look you up.
Thank you. Yeah, introduction would be great. Thank you so much, Anne. So welcome back. Welcome back. Please take a breath with me. Any last thoughts on wish one? I'd like to hear from people we have not heard from. I want to make some space for the quieter voices. No pressure, just an invitation. If you haven't spoken yet today and you'd like to speak into the space, your voice is welcome. Your inquiry, comments, feedback, suggestions. Anything else on wish one as we transition? Wonderful. Okay. How was that Go Wish game? Did anybody get a chance to do the Go Wish game? If you did not do the Go Wish game, maybe add it to your checklist, add it to your to-do list. Any thoughts?
I didn't see a way to do it online. I just saw the way to order it.
Oh, I put the link in the chat. You can click on that link. You can play the game right online. That was what I was showing y'all right before break. Anybody who played the game wanna have some thoughts about that?
I played it. Of course, it makes you think about your priorities. I found a lot of them were repetitive. Like, do I want my friends with me or my family or loved ones with me? So that's a bit annoying.
Yeah, well, they word them in slightly different ways, but yeah, I hear you. Ren, I saw your hands.
Yeah, well, of course, the thing that struck me immediately was, oh, you can't do everything. Like everything, like there's half of the number of slots for very important as there are for, or extremely important for compared to, somewhat important and not important. So
Yeah.
So I very quickly had to start prioritizing, and that was very difficult. And I can see this is going to be something that will take some time to think about.
Absolutely. I mean, there's instructions in the deck and you can play it with groups. And one of the interesting things about it is they come color coded. So there's like a red deck, a blue deck, and they all have the same cards in there, but you can put people together in teams. And then you give the teams a scenario and you say something like, you and your healthcare agent have been in a car accident. You have whittled down your very important pile to one card. Right?
Wow.
Or you are, you are in a dementia facility. Whittle your very important pile down to 2 cards, right? So this is part of the practice. Like, how do we build the muscle of not getting what we want, right? this is the whole piece about end of life work. The intention is to lay out exactly what our ideal is. In one hand, what is our ideal? We can think about this, we can clearly plan. And then in the other hand, we get what we get. Because, you know, if we've been alive this long, we know that it doesn't always go the way we want it to go. So both things are very important practice, that we plan for our ideal, much like a birth plan. We plan for our ideal and we pivot and adjust with what we get, with what's actually happening. So that's really helpful. And that's why I mentioned in that very important column, they make you prioritize. That's sort of the point. So yes, good awareness. Alice.
Yeah. Well, we ended up laughing a lot because we suddenly got very candid about, yeah, I didn't care if I got right with God. I really wanted my family there. So it made my husband and I just really kind of be sort of amused what we learned about each other and what we really cared about.
Totally. I love that you laughed. That's the best response ever. Like, okay, let the family argue. I don't care. Whatever, not my problem. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Great. Great. So, you know, some of the things you might have on your checklist so far are your healthcare agent considerations, conversations, pros and cons, maybe to think about teams, maybe to do some patient advocacy research. I can certainly redo this checklist so it's more aligned with some of those choices, but you can just write stuff in and make your own little checklist. And then you might want to add the Go Wish game to your to-do list, either buy a deck of those cards or play the game online, have your loved ones play the game, send a link, it's completely free. And, you know, you can say, listen, I have homework and I'm doing this game. How about you do this game? And we can compare notes. Like when I was contemplating all this with my mom, she and I are very, very different human beings. And she played this game and I was like, those are your top 4 cards? Completely different than what I would have chosen. So I took a picture of them. She actually was playing with the actual cards. I took a picture of it and I keep it in her folder with all her paperwork because I would never remember the things that were most important to her, even though I've known her my whole life, because they're so different than mine. So we can project onto other people what we think they might want when they might want something really different. So really fun, you know, way to have the conversation is to play this game. Okay. I want to take you to my website resources briefly to a second. Okay. Okay. Just briefly share this screen with you. This is the page that I sent you in an email. It's a private page. It's not public on the site, but you get it by taking this class, and you'll have, you know, access to it forever as long as the website is up. And so this welcome in the blue here is just the 3 things that you needed for today. And then there's a whole bunch of resources. So I'm just going to go through this sort of briskly, but so you can see the whole 5 wishes piece and several ways to get the 5 wishes. There's also some sample letters here to a healthcare agent. There's this addendum, which we're going to go into a little later today. There's the end of life checklist, and you can have a Google Doc, a Word doc, or a PDF, so you can make it your own, completely change it once you download it onto your computer, that's fine. The Go Wish exercises. Then there's this healthcare power of attorney, which we're going to talk about. Support for end of life. This is the most in DNR document for North Carolina. Medical releases and HIPAA documents. Death certificates, dementia directive. This is a wrap-up link if you want to give an evaluation of this class, which I read and really helped me shape the class. Disposition of body documents, a whole lot of choices about what to do with your body. Oh my God, so many choices. We're going to talk next week. Financial resources, some general resources, and this final exit piece, which is kind of controversial, but lets people have some choices around potentially hastening their end, that are sort of gray areas in some realms, but they're available, these websites. You can take a look at them. Okay. Let me. Okay, I'm going to read you this quote from Marcus Aurelius. Even if you're going to live 3,000 more years or 10 times that, remember, you cannot lose another life than the one you're living now, or live another one than you're losing. The longest amounts to the same as the shortest. The present is the same for everyone. Its loss is the same for everyone. And it should be clear that a brief instant is all that is lost. For you can't lose either the past or the future. How could you lose what you don't have? Beautiful death contemplation. Okay, we are back to the 5 wishes. We're on to wish 2. Do I have you in the right spot? No, I do not have you in the right spot. Here we go. Okay, hey Ronnie, would you unmute and read the title? I'm on page 6. The title of the first section in italics and then the next section.
Okay. My wish for the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. I believe that my life is precious and I deserve to be treated with dignity. When the time comes that I'm very sick and I'm not able to speak for myself, I want the following wishes and any other directions that I have given to my healthcare agent to be respected and followed. What you should keep in mind as my caregiver. I do not want to be in pain. I want my doctor to give me enough medicine to relieve my pain, even if that means I will be drowsy or sleep more than I would otherwise. I do not want anything done or omitted by my doctors or nurses with the intention of taking my life. I want to be offered food and fluids by mouth and kept clean and warm.
Thank you so much. Tom, would you read what life support treatment means to me?
Yeah, what life support treatment means to me. Life support treatment means any medical procedure, device, or medication to keep me alive. Life support treatment includes medical devices put in me to help me breathe, food and water supplied by medical device, tube feeding, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, major surgery, blood transfusions, dialysis, antibiotics, and anything else meant to keep me alive. If I wish to limit the meaning of life support treatment because of my religious or personal beliefs, I write this limitation in the space below. I do this to make very clear what I want and under what conditions.
Thank you so much. We're going to skip this in case of emergency at the bottom because we're going to talk about do not resuscitate separately. And then Anne D and then Robin Lynn. Would you read Close to Death? And then after that, Robin, would you read In a Coma and Not Expected to Wake Up or Recover? I'm on page 7. And Anne, if you could read that little italicized at the top as well. Thank you.
Here is the kind of medical treatment that I want or don't want in the 4 situations listed below. I want my healthcare agent, my family, my doctors, and other healthcare providers, my friends, and all others to know these directions. Close to death. If my doctor and another healthcare professional both decide that I am likely to die within a short period of time, and life support treatment would only delay the moment of my death, choose one of the following. I want to have life support treatment. I do not want life support treatment. If it has been started, I want it stopped. I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it could help. but I want my doctor to stop giving me life support treatment if it is not helping my health condition or symptoms.
Thank you.
In a coma and not expected to wake up or recover. If my doctor and another healthcare professional both decide that I'm in a coma from which I am not expected to wake up or recover, and I have brain damage and life support treatment would only delay the moment of my death, choose one of the following. I want to have life support treatment. I do not want life support treatment. And if it has been started, I want it stopped. Or I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it would help, but I want my doctor to stop giving me life support treatment if it is not helping my health conditions or symptoms.
Thank you. So Joan Chesick and then Ann Walsh, could you read the next two? So Joan, permanent and severe brain damage, and then Ann in another condition.
Permanent and severe brain damage and not expected to recover. If my doctor and another healthcare professional both decide that I have permanent and severe brain damage, for example, I can't open my eyes, but I cannot speak or understand, and I'm not expected to get better, and life support treatment would only delay the moment of my death, choose one of the following. I want to have life support treatment. I do not want life support treatment. If it has been started, I want it stopped. Or I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it could help. But I want my doctor to stop giving me life support treatment if it is not helping my health condition or symptoms.
Thank you, love. Ann, you're muted, love. You know, finding that mute button is a pesky little thing sometimes. Sometimes you can hit the space bar if you're on Zoom already. All right.
Here we go. Got it. In another condition under which I do not wish to be kept alive. If there is another condition under which I do not wish to have life support treatment, I describe it below. In this condition, I believe that the costs and burdens of life support treatment are too much and not worth the benefits to me. Therefore, in this condition, I do not want life support treatment. For example, you may write end stage condition. That means your health has gotten worse. You're not able to take care of yourself in any way, mentally or physically. Life support treatment will not help you recover. Please leave the space blank if you have no other condition to describe.
Thank you so much. So here is a list of some life prolonging measures. It is not exhaustive, but it gives you sort of an overview. So again, there's probably healthcare professionals on this call, and I know you're one. There's probably many others. You probably are very much more versed in this. And so feeding tubes and fecal tubes, ventilators, catheters, testing, radiation and chemo, pain medication, renal dialysis, hydration, antibiotics, surgery, CPR, and there's more. So yeah, so contemplating this, any other thoughts about, let's talk a little bit about Wish 2. I think we'll also do a breakout room, but let's hear from some folks about Wish 2. Are you starting to get a sense of the flavor of this wish? Of like, what do you want and not want in the potentially endless amount of variables that could befall a human being, right? We are never going to be able to define all the variables. And as we talked about, the 5 Wishes does an incredible job creating a good enough template that covers all the things that most humans might want. And then there might be some things on here that you just don't agree with, that just don't fit you. And they're encouraging you to cross it out and add things in. So it sort of is as generic as it gets, while also still encouraging empowerment and literacy. But are you starting to get a flavor for Wish 2, like trying to specify what you want and what you don't want? Any thoughts about this? I'd love to hear from people who haven't spoken, who haven't had the space to speak into, if you have thoughts or feelings about this. And you can just go ahead and unmute, because I have 3 screens. I can't see everybody's face all at the same time. Any thoughts about this? Wish to.
I can speak a little bit about that because it's bringing up for me the fairly recent experiences I've had with trying to figure out end of life care for my mom, who passed in 2014, and my dad in 2016. And in both cases, we were kind of caught off guard. The immediate family and a little bit extended family trying to make those decisions because they hadn't made any of those decisions ahead of time. So we had to basically figure out from how well we knew them and what our best guess would be about what they would want. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to make a decision so that my daughter doesn't have to worry about this.
Yeah, best guessing can be stressful. I'm guessing that there was some stress involved in that.
Definitely.
Right.
Fortunately, we didn't get into arguments and strife about it, but there's just very difficult decisions.
Yeah, because when you're facing something like that and the person in question, the family member, the beloved, has no voice, no longer has a voice because they're unconscious or they're in a demented state or any other things, and like you're making life or death decisions for this person, you're not sure what they would want. So that's a lot of intense pressure. And so if you make the choice towards prolonging life and there increases suffering, there's a lot of repercussions for that. And if you make the choice towards death and shorten their life, there's a lot of repercussions for that. So it's a pretty heavy responsibility. And if we specify very clearly what we want, we leave, it's a gift of love to the people around us. They don't have to guess. And when someone's in a dying state, the people around really do want to give, they want to serve, they want to do what's best. They want to follow the directives and directions of the loved one. But if they don't have any, they're pulling what? They're pulling from memory, they're pulling from intuition, they're pulling their best thinking. So if we can leave very clear directions for the people we love and guide the people in our lives that are dying, these are incredible gifts. Other thoughts about this?
I had a thought on the third option on all of these is I want to have life support, but it's kind of leaving it up to the doctor. If the doctor feels that it's helping my health condition, it seems like legally it's a vague place for a doctor to be in, or take the power away from the advocate. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, usually in the hospital room, in those moments, there's no lawyer around. And so what ends up happening is the healthcare agent has the ultimate decision making. And these checklists really guide the healthcare agent more than they guide anybody else, right? It's sort of a map for the person that's guiding the care. The doctors and nurses and healthcare providers are going to really go with the person in charge and their directions. So if that's helpful, if I were to be willing to be a healthcare agent for someone, I would absolutely require that they have their wishes completely spelled out so that I can advocate for them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ren, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, just part of the gift that you're giving is like, I didn't know when my mom got sick on a Friday, January 13th, she went into a hospital, then she went into the nursing home, then she came home to hospice, and I was making those decisions every step of the way. As we were heading toward hospice, she got pneumonia, and the hospice worker is like, "Psst, if you don't give her antibiotics, she'll die quicker." Then, and so I feel at the time I thought I made all the right decisions, but 12 years later, I still question myself continuously. Should I have tried harder? Should I have made more soup? Should I have been more creative? Should I not have listened to her when she said, take me to hospice? Should I have given her a pep talk instead? Like all the should I have given her that antibiotics? All the questions never stop. And if she had laid this out for me, I don't think I'd be doing this 12 years later.
So tender. Oh, so
Yeah.
tender. Thank you for sharing that. You know, we're going to talk about the addendum here soon, but I add something in my addendum to my healthcare agent and to Wish 1 and Wish 2 that says, I accept death, whatever it comes. If you're in a situation to make a bunch of decisions, do the best you can. And, you know, there's no perfect here. And please, death is a gift to me and to everyone. Please do not carry guilt with you. You know, like if someone's going to be in that role of responsibility, I'm going to try to alleviate as much heaviness around it as possible. So if, you know, if you want to write something like that into your addendum to sort of absolve the beautiful, responsible people who are stepping up and to care for you, that would be a blessing, I believe. Thank you, Ren. That was a beautiful share. So
Yeah, one more thought. The you know, I want life support as my dad had done. He didn't really care to have his life extended. I think he would have said, I don't want life support, but it really was a loving gesture to his family to say, I want life support until all my loved ones, important loved ones, can be by my side, have the opportunity to be by my side. And then together, you know, we let him go. So we cease the life support. And I think that that might be a specification to say, like, I don't want my family to say, don't sustain her on life support. She didn't really want that if my spouse is not there, for example, you know, something like that.
I mean, I that is a beautiful choice, and how I feel about all of these choices is, you know, choice is one of the most beautiful and one of the hardest things in life. So we are all at choice. I you know, for myself, you know, so back to this list, and I think Jojo, you asked this question, like, is it a legal list? I don't know really the difference between life support in legal terms and not legal terms. So I'm not sure how to answer your question about that. And then in terms of getting the list, you can certainly take a screenshot of this. It's just a list I've pulled together over time as I've been, you know, contemplating these life prolonging measures. Now, as you all probably know, some of these life prolonging measures are more invasive and some are less invasive, right? It depends on the test. If you're going to get some kind of spinal tap, it's quite an invasive test, or, you know, some other biopsy, those can be invasive, but other tests are not invasive. And so, you know, where do you draw that line? Ooh. And depending on the situation, right? It's one of those, it's back to that, like, there's some level of surrendering to the mystery, you know, tether the camel and trust in God, like, do your paperwork and you get what you get. Like, I remember listening to this Radio Lab podcast years ago, and I actually think it's linked on my page, on my resource page, which is called 9 out of 10 doctors or something. Like 9 out of 10 doctors, when given this list, will say, do nothing to me. The only thing I want is pain medication. And these are people who work in the system, right? They know how invasive these life prolonging measures can be. So then to me, that comes back to a question of, like, how okay am I with death a week or a month or a year before I could have died, based on suffering and quality of life, right? Like, oof, these are the hard choices we have to make for ourselves and sometimes for other people.
Lee, I have a question.
Yeah.
So is hydration considered a life support? Like, if someone puts on that list, they don't want life support, will they not hydrate them? Will they not give them antibiotics? Will they not run any tests? It's like, what is the definition of life support?
It's usually not so black and white or cut or dry. In most examples, in most cases, in institutional settings, they will, ask for this, this, and this. And certainly the healthcare agent can say, well, that seems reasonable and this is not. And if I have on my paperwork, I do not want any life support treatment, it's a good question. I don't know if anybody has the answer to that question. And I don't know that there's some category, like I put this in some kind of category, but I think your question, now I'm understanding your question more, which is, what is a legal definition in the hospital, right? If they're putting hydration in, or if they're putting antibiotics in a drip, and I have told them, I'm an advocate of somebody, I have told them no life support measures, do they consider that life supportive? It's a very good question. And I think,
Yeah, I mean, why would we fill all that out if we don't even know what that means? That seems like there
Yeah.
must be an it. I just assumed life support meant, breathing apparatus that literally keep you breathing or keep you, that moment they take it away, you die. I didn't realize it could mean most of the things.
when we get to the most document, it actually specifies out a whole section on medical interventions, and you'll say, it says full scope of treatment, limited additional interventions, and comfort measures. And then they have a section for antibiotics. They have a section for medically administered fluids and nutrition. So you get to choose at these. It's called section A, section B, section C, section D, and section E. So we're going to talk about the most document next time, but they actually spell it out a little more specifically about each of these categories. And I'm guessing it sort of depends on the institution, and it might even depend on the particular caregiver. I don't know that there's some standard out there. And again, if there's medical people who've worked in this field, please speak up, because it varies. I think it's just a bit unknown. And this is where the addendum comes in to answer your question, which is, if there's things that you want and things that you don't want, you can write that in down below on page 7 or on page 6, what life support treatment means to me, right? Like, I consider this to be invasive and I don't want it. I consider this to be neutral or positive. And I trust my healthcare agent to make the best decisions possible. So these are some ideas.
Isn't there also rules around hospice in some situations? We ran into this with my mother as she was dying, where hospice said that they would not give her antibiotics because it wasn't part of their care.
Yeah,
Procedure.
I mean, hospice is walking people towards death, so they're not going to do life prolonging measures. And not everybody is qualified to go into hospice, because if they need machines, if they need certain things to keep them going before they die, hospice isn't really, some hospices are not equipped for that. And they're more equipped for people who can move towards death without the machine. So yes, it gets complicated.
Okay, thanks.
Some people have to die in the hospital if they're hooked up to things, can't go home, can't go to hospice. There's just unlimited variables.
Aren't there some people in hospice who go out of hospice back into life?
Yes, it's true. They graduate from hospice, not through death, but through not qualifying anymore, for sure. Okay, so what are your thoughts about making these decisions? What are your thoughts about making these decisions about what you want, what kind of treatment you want and don't want? You all want a breakout room to talk about this, or do we want to stay here together? Let's see. Do we want to stay here together? Raise your hand and talk about this a little more. Okay, I had a sense that was true.
Can I say something?
Yan, please, I'd love to hear from you.
I would love to help make some of these decisions. I would love to talk to nurses who've worked in hospice or ICU nurses. I have a sister-in-law who did work in hospice. She's not medical, but she's kind of like the doctors in that YouTube, like, give me nothing. I said, not even water? Because no, if you take water, then you'll be bloated. You'll be a bloated corpse. So it's like, I'm medical, but I haven't been in hospitals in 35 years. So it would be really useful for me to talk again to like somebody, hospice RN or a ICU nurse, kind of that kind of thing. Or maybe that have the knowledge, or other people this on here have the knowledge. But I thought, oh, just give me fluid. And she goes, no, you'll be a big bloated wet floor corpse, She's my healthcare agent.
I mean, one of the empowering ways to end our lives sooner is this process called the voluntary stopping of eating and drinking. And you can find information about that online. And it's actually a pretty, depending on your end stage condition, it can be a fairly pain-free way to go, because certain endorphins kick into our systems when we stop eating and drinking. And it's many, many traditions the world over and throughout history have done that as they've moved towards death. And so stopping eating and drinking is certainly a viable thing. The hospital system will freak out about that.
Will hospice be okay with that?
I don't know. That's a great question. I know that I have a dear friend who walked her parents home that way. They both decided to stop eating and drinking, and they were in a care facility. And the care facility was like, you can't do that. Blah. And they went through a whole negotiation with them, and they said, listen, these are, we're taking full responsibility. We'll sign liability waivers, whatever, but this is what our parents want. They're of sound mind. The whole compassionate euthanasia conversation, or medically assisted death, right? There's like, 5 states that Montana, I think, Colorado, California, maybe Washington, Oregon, where if you've been a resident for 6 months or more, you're of sound mind, you have a diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis, that you can take certain medications and do certain things, and you can be assisted towards death. From my perspective, this is just my opinion, as we get more death literate and death positive, there'll be lots of options for that. Lots of different options, and lots of stories, and lots of YouTubes, and lots of TikToks, and lots of all kinds of things that help us understand the choices people are making, so it can inform our choices. And right now we're in a big black void of not knowing, because we're not supposed to talk about this subject.
Do you have a place on your website about not eating or drinking, or is that?
I do. It's down at the very bottom.
Okay.
It used to be called the Hemlock Society too, and
Is that considered euthanasia, just not eating or drinking? Huh.
I don't know if it technically falls under that, but that's the one that is the most self-empowering, but not everyone can be in a situation to do that. There's certain conditions where that wouldn't apply.
I'd like to contribute something, because my parents went through that. And one thing, this is another complication, but you have to be really careful that it's not considered suicide, some of these things, because then the insurance won't pay. But our experience was, and this might be something to think about, there's different hospice services, but, in our case, the hospice was very supportive. They kind of do that thing that this person did, wink, wink, nod, nod. We'll put it in the terms that it needs to be in, so everyone's happy. And so since you have choices of who you want to be your hospice service, I suggest, if you're not with one that you're not really comfortable with, then try another one, because they were very supportive of what we wanted to do in New House, to put it so it was all, legally and everything.
Good point, Lisa. I also see your hand, Lisa Bibelheimer. I'll get to you in a second. Yeah, I mean, sometimes whether Medicare or insurance will cover hospice is dependent on the county you're in. So you might have to use the hospice that you have and that you get. So that might be a limiting factor. There's also hospice care facilities where you would go and live there versus be at home, and where a hospice person would come in. And one common misconception is that hospice is there all the time. They are not. If you're at home, they might visit once or twice a week, or they might be able to be on call for meds and stuff like that, but they are not an around the clock care. So so many factors go into this. It was like, what are the services of your particular county? You know, down to these levels of variables. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for that. And Lisa Meibleheimer.
Well, I am undergoing training to be a hospice volunteer with Four Seasons, which is based in Henderson County. And they already like specifically, I mean, outright said that, you know, at the very end, at the 11th hour, it's best to not give too much water and, you know, about the bloating, and definitely encourage that voluntary, you know, like cessation of eating and drinking. So they were definitely on board with that, just to, you know.
Thank you.
It depends on the person, honestly. You know,
Oh,
I've had hospice people who toe the line more and hospice people who
Right.
don't. You know, it's just like anything.
Right.
And it goes back to your question, Jojo, of like, what is considered life support? And I think like it's multiply interpretable, which makes things complicated.
Hmm.
Peggy.
I've just always told my kids, I said, if I'm there, just put me in an apartment and let me starve to death. So they're like, we can't do that. So that's really what I want to do. So am I right in hearing you, if you have hospice that's coming in and out, they're not going to be paying attention to that?
If you're at home, my experience, and other people can speak to this, if you're at home and being cared for by loved ones, hospice is there as a support system, but they're busy as heck. They're not doing massive oversight. They give some education, they give some support, they write some prescriptions. They're there if you need to call in the middle of the night and say, hey, this is happening, what do I do? They give you a sense of where the person is in their death process, but they're not available for the kind of depth that often some of us want and need. So we're a bit winging it. That's been my experience. Other people might have other experiences.
So a sidebar on that, is there a way to get out of the hospital and go home?
It depends on 1,000,001 things. I mean, I have a friend right now whose sister is in the hospital with pancreatic cancer, and at 4th stage, you've got a lot of deterioration of the whole digestive system, and she wants to go home and die, and yet it's a bit messy, and she's needing some of these systems that she's on to sort of keep the body in integrity while she moves towards death. And hospice may or may not take her,
Okay.
right? So just lots of variables, lots and lots. I had a friend die of pancreatic cancer, and he died in the hospital for that same reason. There was just too much monitoring that needed to go on, and hospice did not have the capacity for that.
I just want to leave and die. And interestingly enough, my father was a member of the Hemlock Society. But for him, what that meant is, Peggy, you shoot me, and I don't care if you go to jail. So, you know.
I don't care if you go to jail.
He really didn't.
Right. I mean, a death literate culture also means a life literate culture, right? And if we could be compassionate about the fact that there's so many variables and options that some people might choose to lead, that have ALS or that have some of these really excruciating end stage processes, like, can we compassionately and empathetically have people make choices in different ways? I mean, I'm hoping that our culture can get there, but you know, we're not there now.
We'll have to live long enough to die well, right?
Yeah, right. Or, you know, be in an enclave of support where we do it ourselves. And whatever that means. Other thoughts on wish 2? Why don't you look at your checklist and make some notes about what do you need to do to contemplate this? What do you need to do to contemplate wish 2? Do you want to do some research about life support treatment? Do you want to listen to that podcast I mentioned? There's a great book out there called Being Mortal. Dr. Gwande wrote this book about like how little education doctors get about death and the dying process. Almost none.
Did you say that you have on your YouTube site those doctors who say, just let me
Yeah,
go?
it's on my webpage, and it's a Radiolab episode.
I think that'd be really useful, hearing people who've been in the trenches, and because that's what I usually hear is like, just don't do anything.
Don't do anything. Manage pain. And pain is a whole nother conversation, right? Like, oh my God, we could spend 4 hours just on the pain conversation. Some people have gotten excited about Stephen Jenkinson, who wrote a book called Die Wise, and he's also got a film out there called Grief Walker, and he is very opinionated about pain management. And his perspective is that hospice is way too liberal with the pain medication, and that pain is part of what takes us out. It's part of what births us, much like contractions. Birth, pain is the contractions of death. And his perspective is like, ride the waves of pain as if as if this is your birth canal. Like, and I don't have an opinion about that, but are there other options? Like, can we start looking at marijuana and other plant medicines to assist in these processes, meditation and music and hypnosis and other things? Do we have to be filled with morphine at the end of our lives when we sort of want to be having some relationship with the process, and I think we're going to talk about the addendum, but in my addendum, I say, yes, I don't want to be in excruciating pain, but I also don't want to be drugged out. Is there some happy medium here?
What do you have to say about psychedelics? Because
Ian, hold on 1 second. There's a couple people with their hand up, so just hold on a second. I see you, but yeah. So I see you, Alice, and I see you, Jill, and then Anne. Give just 1 second though. So go back to your checklist and just what do you feel that you need to do in order to get right with this wish to question? What do you need to research? Who do you want to listen to? What do you want to read? What do you want to think about? Do you want to tune into your own intuition? Do you want to, as Anne was saying, reach out to someone in the world of hospice, or even call hospice and say, hey, what resources do you have around my choices? There's more and more emerging out there. So make yourself a note here about how you want to make this decision. Some of you might be clear, like I am. Oh, I'm so clear on this. I know exactly the box I'm going to check. I'm done. Others of us are going to be agonizing over this question a little more. Alice, go ahead.
I just wanted to add two things. One is when our father decided he wanted to die, he basically stopped taking medications. He just stopped his medications. And what was explained to him is his lungs would gradually fill up with liquid. And so he understood what would happen, and that became a very powerful choice for him. And the other was to affirm what you were saying about medication. They gave our mother so much morphine that we were nervous having it in their apartment. We were afraid they might be robbed or something with the amount of morphine that was there. And we eventually just begged them to take it back because she wasn't going to use it. And so that was shocking to me that they were so liberal with giving it to us and not even watching it being administered, but just giving it to us. So there are strange things out there.
Yeah. Hospice does give the caretakers full access to, these morphine and the other one, I'm forgetting, or a whole series of opioids and pain medication. And it is an interesting choice. There's not a lot of oversight about it. And I'm sure it differs from state to state and county to county, and maybe they're tightening that up with the opioid epidemic, but yes. And I think it's often said that, it's a toss up often whether people are dying of their disease or of morphine overdose at the very end stages. And maybe that's okay. I think hospice is one of the best things we have in our culture that is, supportive of death, and they're not perfect. And I think if we end up in hospice and we end up with too much pain medication, like that's maybe fall in the realm of we get what we get. But if we want to specify up front, like, hey, I want to try to be moderate about this, that's a choice we can try to put out there up front. I'm looking at some of your chats. Yeah, we're going to get to the addendum. Administering morphine, it is tricky morally. I know that one of the Kimchi, who you know, and others were on morphine at the end of their lives. And it was always a, ooh, like how much, it's quite an initiation going through that process, and it is tricky morally for sure. I wrote a paper on euthanasia, and what I found was is overlooked as a way to accelerate death. Yeah, got it. Yes, it was overlooked as it was, meaning it was accepted. Yeah, hospice does do a lot of turn the other way, like, yeah, you know, they try to minimize pain. And that's their bottom line. That's their orientation. And it's a great one. It's a fine one, but we also have other choices. Jill, I saw your hand. Are you still wanting to share something?
I just was briefly, my father died on June 10th and my sister died on June 17th. I got to be with both of them. My dad in Indiana, my sister in Florida. My father was an athlete, like in really great shape, but it was, you know, he was just ready to go. He was 90. And but this is the thing. He was dying. He had cancer and he was dying, but his body would not give out. And he was so ready. He was so excited just to go home. He was so excited. And he was also helpless. He couldn't even have a drink of water. He couldn't do anything, but his body was still functioning. This went on for weeks. And it was horrible. It was horrible for him. You know, they finally took him in because it was the state of Indiana. And he saw medicine and said, "Can't you please just help me out?" to the hospice nurse that came in. But they couldn't do it in Indiana. They had to take him to this house where he didn't know anybody, and he died alone in this facility because only there could they give him morphine. And it's just one situation. My sister, on the other hand, died in Florida, and there was all the help there that she needed for her pain in the house. But it's just so tricky, you know, and he was very clear what he wanted, but he wanted to get out, you know, but it's just like, it's so tricky about the drugs and the helping them across, and how long really should we linger?
Yeah.
You know, when everybody's done, everybody's ready, you know, but the body goes on and on and on. So it's,
you know, I love that, and the mystery of all that. And yeah, yeah, really good questions. And I think that, you know, sometimes legalities which are in place to protect people, right, and they get in the way of some kind of coherent way of being sometimes. You know, sometimes they protect and sometimes they harm these legal ways of thinking. So yeah, all really good comments and thoughts. Rima, and then Anne, and then we're gonna, oh, I see your hand, Anne. Anne Burlack, yeah. So Rima, go ahead.
Okay, there. Okay. I saw a whole show about, or listened to a show about this guy, BJ Miller. I don't know if anybody can see that.
The beginning guide to the end.
Yes. Wonderful book. I listened to his whole thing, and then I listened to the audio book, and then I bought the book to use sort of as a workbook. Fabulous resources in here and a wonderful mindset. And I can say from experience that my dad was dying. He was in his own bed, and I had hospice come. They filled up the refrigerator with morphine. And, you know, it was like, wink, wink, use whatever you need to keep him comfortable. We won't ask any questions. And if you need more, just call this number and it will be delivered. You know, that was a real, I was on a tightrope of, I could have given him enough morphine to really just take him out. Boom. I didn't do that. I guess he just decided it was time and he just went. But he was feeling no pain when he went. And
but feeling no pain also means you're not feeling there's no consciousness, right? And I think that's Stephen Jenkinson's point, which is, if we're gonna have this experience, can we have the experience?
Right.
And you know, and there's no right and no wrong here.
Right. That's what I'm say. It's just, for a while there, I was like, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? Well, I don't think I gave him that much, it's just, and then you get hit with a lot of criticism from siblings or don't agree with, your
Right.
decision.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Rima.
I mean,
That's
it's a
tricky.
tricky place to
It
be.
is. It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. All right, let's take, so Anne, and then we're gonna look at the addendum.
Well, I don't really want to take the conversation way off, but one of the things in the past 3 months that I've been looking at is there's been a lot of stuff that's even made the New York Times about using psychedelics. And there have been several conferences and they've been reported in the Times. And it's about simply about preparing for death. And what they're saying is, and I don't know if it's true, is that a micro dose and it can take away the fear of death. And so I just would be interested in knowing what your knowledge and experiences. It might be a completely different road that other people are taking.
Yeah. I'm a big advocate of psychedelics in preparation for living a life that's more ecstatic as well as preparing for death. I'm a huge advocate personally.
Good.
Most of these substances are federally mandated as class 1, felonies, so you can't really access them. So let's just say that. But if you have resources or guides or people, then you have access to this. Psilocybin is a great one to practice with death. 5-MeO-DMT is a great one, and all cultures, substances are used to practice at death. We're one of the few cultures that is so death illiterate that we not only can't have conversations about this, but we have no rituals and ceremonies to practice dying. Why aren't we practicing our whole lives? This is the ultimate thing we will do. So yes, and then there's other substances. I don't think I agree that a microdose will take away the fear of death. Microdoses do certain things, but probably not that. It would probably have to be a pretty significant journey to practice at death, to face the fears, to move through the resistances, and to really deal with what's in between us and our ability to surrender. So that's a whole conversation, and there's certainly people speaking and writing about it out there. And I would say put that on your checklist to check out. Like there's a lot of podcasts. If you want to look up, in an Apple Podcasts or any of the podcasts, if you want to look up psychedelics and death preparation, or there's just so much stuff out there right now. I would look for that.
That was a beautiful, wonderful answer for me. Do you have one person that you really like that I should look for a podcast or books?
I don't. If anybody else does, please put it in the chat.
Michael Pollan.
Michael Pollan, great. Yeah, he's got a book and a whole series out now talking about the psychedelics. Is it on Netflix, Jojo?
Yeah, the Netflix series, I think it's the second episode because I just saw it was on psilocybin. Very good.
Yeah, so look at all the resources are going to come through the chat here. And my guess is that wherever you live, there are people in your area doing guided journeys. And if you have an intention to do a journey and you want to confront some of this stuff, you can probably find some resources in your area. It's really going to be word of mouth and underground because that's where it has to be right now. So ask around.
Okay.
Ask your shadier friends.
Is California different?
No, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I meant maybe that was easier out here.
Maybe. Yeah, there's probably lots of medicine guides out there for sure. All right, let's take a breath together. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna, Damon is gonna set up a breakout room that's going to be complicated. So I'm going to introduce that first before I go into this addendum. And so the next breakout room is going to be with a buddy. And if you have someone in mind that you want a buddy with, would you please tell Damon in the chat box so he can set you up together? And if you don't have someone in mind that you want a buddy with, he will randomly assign you. And the buddy system is one of the most beautiful things about taking this course, because what it is there's a co-accountability system where you get to be paired up with someone, you exchange telephone numbers, you exchange email addresses, and you help each other finish your paperwork. It's so great because you can hold each other accountable, you can be support systems, you can encourage each other. And so I trust this process so implicitly that you'll get the perfect person for you. So if you don't have someone in mind, you'll get randomly assigned, and then you'll show up and you'll share, and one of my tasks for you is to get with your buddy on the phone this coming week to talk about this course, to talk about what you're doing, to talk about your checklist. So this person is your ally. This person is your new friend to hold your hand, and you're going to support each other. So chat to Damon or to the whole group or whatever, who you want your person to be, and then he'll start setting that up as I talk about the addendum. Okay.
Lee, one other option is we can let the participants choose the room so they can choose together. I don't
Oh.
mind. It take me a little longer to assign everyone manually, which I don't mind doing.
And how do they do that, I wonder?
Well, I think when we create the breakout room, it shows everybody's names, and then you just choose the room, if I'm not mistaken.
Should we try that? That sounds sort of chaotic and fun, like that.
Okay, well, we can.
Wild. Sort of
yeah.
like death.
But just two to a room?
Yeah, I'm gonna create 15 rooms or 14 rooms. So yeah, pick one buddy. I know Anne had asked for both her sisters to join them, so you could choose to join together if you want to discuss that together.
All right, we're gonna see how it goes. Can we expect some chaos? Like, wait, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. Not
Yeah,
yet.
they should be able to choose.
Okay, so don't leave yet. I want to talk to you about this addendum first.
I'll
I-
close it then. There we go.
Okay, yeah, in a minute. Okay. So the addendum. So my experience in having these 5 wishes is that it's an incredible place to start. It's an incredible template, and it didn't really have my essence and my core values and my nuances come through. And so I made an addendum, and this idea did not originate from me. I got it from one of my mentors, Caroline Young, and a whole bunch of my death care teams made one also. You have full access to my addendum. I have given you a link to it on my site, and I have it here. And basically what I've done is I've put wish 1, wish 2, wish 3, wish 4, and wish 5, and I've spelled out some of the more detailed pieces that are important to me. And so this is the opportunity for you to go into great detail about what you want and what you don't want with regards to each of these wishes. I actually am remiss and have been wanting to update my end of life paperwork for a year. So I'm not the only, you all aren't the only ones who are procrastinating. I procrastinate too, and I need my own buddy. But I haven't updated this in quite a while. The last time I did this was 2019, so it's due, it's overdue. But I wanted to give you an idea, and you're welcome to use any of my language, steal, take anything you want from here, make it your own. And so it gives you some ideas, and it primes the pump, and it gives you some inspiration of what you might want to add of your own essence to an addendum. And it's basically an elaboration of these wishes. So in wish 1, I put some information in there about my death care team and who they are and how I want them to make supportive decisions with each other. And I also specified that I'm happy for them to consult other healthcare professionals. In wish 2, I talked about how I want hospice and non-pharmacological attempts at pain control. I wanted to specify about this sort of administering pain only when there's signs of pain, administering pain medication, and hallucinations being natural and acceptable. So the addendum can be as long as you want it to be. And how I see the addendum is that it's basically going to be used by our healthcare agent, our team, our loved ones to guide their process. It's probably not going to be read by anybody in any kind of hospital or hospice administration, but it is going to be really helpful for those who are steering our care. Is that clear what that is? Okay. So you can add to your checklist to review my addendum if you want to review it, and then pull it into a Word document and use it, change it. Obviously, put your own people's names in there and your own values and your own thoughts. Any questions on the addendum? Okay. All right. So now I'd like to go into the breakout rooms with your buddy, and here's an opportunity for you to talk about anything about Wish 2, anything about the checklist, anything about the addendum. And I want you to start getting real about your checklist dates. When do you want to have certain things done? What do you want to do next? What do you want to prioritize? What are the things you want to research? So I think what Damon is saying is, if he puts this list up, you can choose the person to go into a room with. Is that what you're saying, Damon?
Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead and assign rooms to the people that put it in the chat already, but anyone who hasn't requested, you can either text directly that person and say, meet me in a room, or we
Well,
can go from there.
this is a grand experiment. It might totally fail and everybody could come back here and we'll reassign, but we're gonna try it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Here's for the grand experiment.
Yes, so now people are texting me so fast, I gotta go back and forth between the chat and the room. Hold on, let me bring the room over here. Okay. Give me a minute, everyone. There's a lot of folks to assign here.
Yes, you're doing great. Thank you so much.
Joan and Rena are gonna be in room 2, Tom and Sally in room 1.
So I'd like to give y'all 20 minutes. It's a long time. Maybe I should give you all 15 minutes. Let's see what else I have to do here. Hold on a second.
So should we be seeing the room now?
No, I have not opened it yet. I'm making assignments.
Okay.
Give me just a second. Linda and Patricia are going to be in room 3.
How are we gonna know how many people are in each room? It sounds like you should just assign the rooms.
Yeah, we can do that. Well, once I open it.
Otherwise, you'll have 4 or 5 people all going into one room.
Damon,
Yeah.
Linda, Lenny, and Patricia would like to be 3 in a group. Can you do that?
Damon, make magic.
Yeah, if you put it in the text, I can do that.
I did, but I think you missed it. I'll put it in the.
I haven't necessarily missed it. I just probably haven't gotten to it yet. So I'm gonna recreate the breakout room with just manual assignment and we'll go from there.
Let's all send Damon a little love, little twinkles.
Thanks, you guys. So I have Linda and Patricia in room 3. Now I'm going to room 4, which is Kwai and Ren will be in room 4.
Yeah.
Love you, Damon.
Jill and Rye in room 5.
When you're in there, make sure to exchange phone numbers and email addresses, so you have each other's contact information.
Yeah, and then room 6, we'll have, oh my goodness, I'm just going to move back and forth here. Hold on. We have Alice and Amy and Lisa in room 6. This is Alice Elliott, right? Amy Elliott and Lisa Wheely. I'm guessing that's Lisa first name. Then we have Linda and Landon, or Linda, Lenny and Patricia.
So in the meantime, you can be looking at this checklist.
I think it might have you guys already in a room because I don't see you.
Damon, you can add Lenny to Linda and Patricia's room.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you don't know anyone here, it's okay. You're going to get the perfect person. That's how it goes.
Yeah, there's a lot of requests coming through at once. I'm just trying to track here and there's conversation going. So I'm having to track through that. Give me a
Yeah,
sec.
thank you so much. You're doing great.
Jill and Riley, I have you guys. All right. I think that's all I have. So now I'm just gonna tell you the other rooms. This will be easier. So we're gonna have Ann Walsh and Diane together in room 7. We're gonna have Ann D and Ellen in room 8.
I don't think you need to share with people, Sudie. I think they can just find out when they get there.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. It'll be a grand surprise along with the grand experiment.
Yes, very good. We're getting there. Almost done, you guys.
Yeah, stand up and stretch. It's a good stretch break. So talk about your checklists, talk about your addendums, talk about your wish tos, and then we'll come back and we'll have some chance to share and we'll wrap up. and
Okay,
Talk a little bit about next week.
great. All right, opening rooms now.
Awesome, thank you.
Welcome.
Oh, we were supposed to do numbers.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I know that some people got with one other person and some people were in larger groups. We do have one person that needs to link up in a buddy system. That would probably mean adding a third to your group. Is any group of 2 open to that?
We are.
Lisa and Ann?
Mm.
Okay, so it's Ronnie Watkins, and so maybe you all in the chat could exchange. phone
Just
numbers.
curious, if Ronnie is from Asheville, is that correct?
Western North Carolina, yeah.
Then Linda Landon was also looking for people from Asheville.
Excellent. Okay, why don't you all chat it up on a private part of the chat? Just chat each other privately and then figure out where to go. And
I don't remember the name of my partner to send my telephone to.
okay, yeah, you were supposed to do that in the room, so hopefully your partner will remember you.
He'll remember my name, but he won't remember my number because I don't think phone number.
Right. And so he'll remember your name, and so then he'll go into the chat and you can exchange there.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure which group I'm in, added to.
Ronnie, just pay attention to the chat, and Linda Landon's going to reach out to you, and Lisa Bibelheimer's going to reach out to you. You can make your choice. All right, take a breath with me, everyone. And when you're in the chat, you can chat individually. You don't have to chat to everyone. That might be a more private way to share your info.
Are we going back into the chat?
Nope, we're not. We're not going to the breakout rooms. The chat is a different function. The chat is where you type in information.
Right.
So go ahead and mute yourselves, everyone. I'm trusting y'all to work it out. Work it out, work it out. Okay, here's some of your suggested homework. You have your checklists, and it's up to you to really hone in on what you want to do by when. It's probably going to extend beyond the scope of these 2 weeks. As you know, it's kind of a lot of stuff, but if you have a buddy and you have an accountability system and you have dates that you put down, that you can work towards these goals. So do the Go Wish if you haven't done it. Talk to your family and friends. Tell them you've got assignments, you've got to talk to people. Talk to possible healthcare agents. Contemplate wishes 1 and 2. Read, research, gather information, make a list of the things you're interested in, and just see what you're feeling drawn to. I'd love for you to get with your buddy this week by email or phone and work with your checklist. Rewrite your checklist if it doesn't suit you, what I have here, make a different checklist, make it in a different style. Just set yourself up for success, because you know how these things go. We can set a pile of paperwork on our desk or on our table and forget about it. So it takes some diligence to move forward with this. You're getting a lot of, inspiration, hopefully motivation, empowerment, and it just takes like taking these steps. And the outcome is that you get to be guided by this, and your loved ones get to be guided by this. Any questions, comments at this point? Actually, let me give you this quote, and then and tell you one more thing, and then I can stop sharing and we can chat for a few more minutes. So this is a beautiful quote from the Death Cafe. Working at a hospice, I asked a woman, "What's it like to know you're dying?" She responded, "What's it like pretending that you aren't?" We're all walking towards our death. And there's this other beautiful one from Jeff Foster that I just discovered recently. Jeff Foster is a spiritual teacher. He talks a lot about death. And he says, "You will lose everything. Your money, your power, your fame, your success, perhaps even your memories. Your looks will go, loved ones will die, your body will fall apart. Everything that seems permanent is impermanent and will be smashed. Experience will gradually or not so gradually strip away everything it can strip away. Waking up means facing this reality with open eyes and no longer turning away. But right now, we stand on sacred and holy ground, for that which will be lost has not yet been lost. And realizing this is the key to unspeakable joy. Whoever or whatever is in your life right now has not yet been taken away from you. This may sound trivial, obvious, like nothing, but really it is the key to everything, the why and how and wherefore of existence. Impermanence has already rendered everything and everyone around you so deeply holy and significant and worthy of your heartbreaking gratitude. Loss has already transfigured your life into an altar. Any last thoughts? Any last thoughts? Questions, contemplations, offerings? I see you, Anne, and I see you, Linda. I want to give a little moment of pause for folks who haven't spoken yet today. I know there's a lot of you, and again, no pressure, just an invitation. Sometimes the quieter among us need a minute, the more introverted among us. Okay, Linda, go ahead.
I just want to say this is my second time doing this. And I'm so glad I was able to stay for the whole thing today, because I feel like I took in so much more than round one, and I'm incredibly grateful to you, Lee. And I'm thrilled that there are many of us on this call from the Asheville Weaverville area, because I'm really interested in creating a deaf group like you have. And we'll see.
Yeah, thank you. Jules, I see your question. I think the goal for me goes back to so Jules's question is the point to try to complete the entire checklist before the class is over? I don't think that's realistic. I think that what's probably more realistic is, weeks for people who are super efficient and focused and diligent, and probably months for people who aren't. So what's a realistic time frame for each person? And, you have the tools and the resources and some more embodied and more intimate relationship with this process. And so I'd say, how can you gather the support around you and the intention to complete this at a time that feels like the right pace for you? That would be my response to that. I forgot to share one more thing. Hold on. I'm terrible at advertising myself, and this is just the sister class to this one. I just wanted to let you know that it's happening. It's a 4-week program, so it's 2 hours over the course of 4 weeks. And this one happens to start on a Sunday. So it's 4 Sundays from 4 to 6 p.m. And it's with my dear beloved friend, Mary Lane. And we teach this together. It's called Walking Towards a Good Death. And the reason it's a sister program is because it's internal preparation. It's a deep, deep contemplation of what we need to look at. Letting go, soulfulness, presence, and receiving are the 4 topics. And this starts on February 19th. So I'll remind you again next week. And next week we are meeting on Zoom at 2 o'clock, 2 to 6 Eastern time again. Any last thoughts? Anne, I think you had your hand up as well.
It's just about bookkeeping. We're meeting, will you send us an email giving us the things that we need to have? I'm just not very organized with my computer. Would that be a lot of trouble to do that?
The things that you need to have were in the initial confirmation email, and then you can go
Got that.
Okay, that's really all you need. And then there's a link to my webpage that has that resource list on it. And if
Okay.
you want to go deeper into any of that stuff, that's available to you at any
So
time.
as long as I have that article that you sent us before.
The link.
Yeah, and is it Saturday or Sunday of next weekend that we're meeting again?
It's Saturday.
Saturday,
It's
okay.
a week from today. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lee, can you send us an email with the the homework that what you just did?
Why don't you take a screenshot of it? You can take a picture with your phone, or you can take a screenshot. These are just my suggestions, but you can also work off the checklist that you are developing. And the Zoom link will be the same, but I will send you another reminder. So the Zoom link pops up at the top of your email, probably on Friday or even Saturday morning. So it's right there fresh for you. And I just want to do a big shout out to Damon again for his help and organizing those crazy chaotic breakout rooms. Thank you, Damon. And
My pleasure.
yeah, talk to your buddy this week, make a phone date, get the support, learn to receive and give support. This is part of what we need to learn to do when we're walking towards a good death. Give and receive support. We're not in this alone. Any last thoughts? Any last?
I just wanted to say thank you, Lee. This was great. I'm so glad I jumped in. A good time to initiate action. Say thank you.
Yeah, it's always a good time to talk about death.
And just an offering, there were a couple people that were asking about private chat rooms. The rooms that we've set up last for the buddies, I still have and can open those rooms again. If any of you want to talk or make a final plan or get your phone numbers or anything you didn't get done before you leave, I can just open those up and you can go back in and join before we end.
That's a great idea. And also I wonder if it would be worthwhile to take a screenshot of that so we know who's with who, and maybe, I wonder if you can save a breakout room configuration. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it's a great question. I
don't
don't
think
know
so.
once it's closed if we
Yeah.
can. But I can get a screenshot.
Great. So I think what Damon's offering is, do you want to go back in with your buddy now? I want to suggest, Damon, that they just call their buddies on their own.
Okay.
Yeah. Call and email and arrange a time this coming week. This is a lot. It's been 4 hours of a fire hose. So it's a lot. Why don't you rest your brains and hearts? Any last comments? I love seeing you all here.
Will the chat be saved as well? Will that be accessible to us?
Yes, I will. That's a
Great.
good point. I will email the slides and the link to the video and the chat box, but realistically, that's probably going to happen Monday.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, good reminder. Thank you.
I want to say that just as like a circling back, in the sense of to Courtney Brooks, who we opened with. Just
Yeah. Yeah,
thank you
blessings.
for that, honoring her.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Amy. Let's just touch back to honoring our beloved dead and our ancestors and the ones who have gone before us, and the ways in which we hold them in our hearts and that they guide us towards this sacred journey that we're all on. Thank you for your tears and your vulnerability. It's a beautiful note to take us out on, Amy. Thank you. Blessings, you all. Much love. So much love. See you next week.